should be able to see right there in front of you. What you should be able to see is the chat button. So make sure and get plenty of interaction happening in there. That's where the start of online networking can take place. We also have the Q&A function as well for when our speakers join you later on. And of course, you can tweet, and we really encourage you to tweet at EmpowerConf. So hashtag EmpowerConf as well as hashtag CUA Alliance. Okay. Now I'm going to remind you of that many times, but to get our session off to a great start this morning, can I hand you over first and foremost to Sandra Nolan-Dively from Empower. Sandra, over to you.
Good morning, Susan. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 4th Empower Explore event. This is our 2nd time hosting this event online. Now, as many of you know, Empower was set up in 2017, and the goal of Empower is to fast-track female entrepreneurship in the region. I want to welcome and say a big thank you to all from the European Social Fund and the Department of Justice and Equality for funding Empower. When I think about Empower, there are really 3 elements to it. There's the delivery of the programme, there's the role of normalising female entrepreneurship, and also the sense that we are building a community. So we're very proud to say at Empower that to date, we have delivered programs to just under 100 female founders in the region. We have had 60 people on the START program and 37 people on the Growth program. And we are very happy to welcome another 14 new established business entrepreneurs onto our Growth program this June. So I want to give a very big warm welcome to all past, present, and potentially some future Empower participants to this morning's event. I also want to say a big welcome and thank you to all the people who are joining us today from the different state agencies and different organisations who have played a key role in supporting Empower. Through these different people who have supported us, we have been able to give additional mentoring, additional training to our participants. There's also been great support in relation to, as we call it, opening doors, making connections and making introductions. I also want to welcome and thank the many guest speakers we've had on the Empower programs over the years, particularly the entrepreneurs who've come and shared their stories and given great advice on their entrepreneurship journey. So thank you so much, and you're very welcome today. And I am particularly looking forward to the people who have joined us this morning at our conference. Now, when I mentioned community, there was an established women in business. There was many established women in business networks before Empower came. Network Ireland have it across many counties in the region. We have Sligo Women in Business, Donegal Women in Business, and just last year, Awaken Hub was set up. So I want to say you're all very welcome for joining us today. And I also want to thank you for welcoming Empower and for showcasing us within your members so that we can all work together and collaborate together to fast track female entrepreneurship in the region. And just finally, I just want to say on behalf of Maria, Michelle, and I, and many of the mentors and trainers on the Empower program, it has been such a pleasure to work with these female founders. They have shown excellent resilience, innovation, and amazing passion to drive their businesses forward, particularly in the difficult trading environment we found ourselves in the last year and a half. And I have to say, it has been so inspiring to watch how they have worked with each other, supported each other, shared advice for each other, and built amazing, strong relationships. And I suppose there's an expression that's been coined over the last year, which it says we are now becoming, as we say, the Empower tribe. So I hope you all enjoy today's event, and I hope you find it beneficial. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, enjoy your day, and I'll hand back over to Susan.
And I have to say, you've all got up and running here to a great start. Good morning to Michelle. Janine also sends in a message here on chat. Fran says hello. Lisa says hello. Sylvia says hello. Anna says hello. And she mentions her business as well, Little Red Edu. So make sure and pop your businesses in there as well. Lucy says good morning from sunny Cork. Fidelma says hello from a blue sky in Galway, etc. Now, I'm able to confirm that that is absolutely the case. So keep them coming. Absolutely keep them coming. And I see Val here is also on Twitter. So just again to remind you that it's hashtag EmpowerConf and also hashtag CUA Alliance. Okay. And so please keep them coming. I have all sorts of devices here in front of me to keep a good eye on you. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen between now and our coffee break. And then after that, I'm going to take you through what's going to happen later on in the day. So we're going to start off with an opening address from Dr. Orla Flynn, President of GMIT, and of course with the announcement today of all of the CAO options right around the country. Of course, it's a really big day for our universities, the length and breadth of the country, so we're very grateful to have her. After that, live from Paris, we are going to have Anne Ravanona. She is the founder and CEO of Global Investor. She's going to take us through the funding menu, and she's going to have a really super interactive session with everybody. And then after that, we are going to have a pitch competition. Now, that is where the power is in your hands. You are going to hear from three people who are going to pitch, and then we are going to hand it over to you in order to vote who wins that competition. Then after that, Anne, who is the master of all pitches, is going to give us some feedback on what she has seen. Then we're going to have a coffee break before we move into another session focusing on freedom, flexibility, business growth and blockchain. So settle in, you're in for an action-packed morning. Now, before I ask Dr. Orla Flynn to join us, I'm just going to ask the team here, can you please share the screen? And can you share a Mentimeter link, please, in the chat so that everybody can engage? So I'm just going to ask the team to share the screen. And to then, what you'll see is a question that we wanted to pose to you, first and foremost. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask everyone to share your thoughts, because we do know, of course, that we are at now another stage in the COVID-19 and the lockdown journey in the country. And what we wanted to ask you is this question: what positive thing do you want to see embedded into normality following on from what we learned in lockdown? So that link, if I could ask please for that to all be shared in the chat. Now, if you can't access this through the link, you can of course go to the instructions at the top of the screen, which is www.menti.com, and use the code 9248 9630. So I'm just going to let that happen there for a moment. And we're just going to see then what positive things that you want to see embedded into normality following on from what we learned in lockdown. So I'm just going to give you a moment there to think about that. Okay. So, and I'm going to ask Dr. Orla Flynn. She's soon going to be joining me. So the first answer in here is self-care. Greater work-life balance has also come in here as well. Let's also see what other people are going. We are now, there's lots and lots. So online meetings. It was just interesting here in studio, before we went live, we were just talking about how useful hybrid meetings can be. Okay, now there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots coming. Lots. Okay, brilliant. Flexibility is the one word that's jumping out here most. So flexibility, 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 flexible working, hybrid meetings, innovative thinking. This is going to be, I'm really interested to ask Dr. Orla Flynn to comment on this. So with that, please do keep your questions coming in, or please do keep your answers coming in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite Dr. Orla Flynn to take to the podium. And while she's doing that, I'm just going to ask the team to make sure that the answers that are appear on the screen in front of us as well. Wonderful. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed for that. That is really interesting. So flexibility, self-care, hybrid working, etc. That is what I hear people are really interested in preserving from lockdown. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Orla Flynn, President of GMIT.
Blair. It's Misha Orlani Line, Uachtaráin in Institute Technoleach na Galva agus Muyo. And I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking a few words here this morning at this Empower Explore event run by our Innovation Hub's colleagues. And just want to say well done to the whole team, and you know, really terrific morning ahead, and best of luck to all the participants later on as well in the pitching. The Empower programme, as you know, is delivered by our Mayo iHub in close collaboration with our Connacht Ulster Alliance partners, technological university partners in IT Sligo and in Letterkenny IT. And before I reflect a little bit on today's topics, I just want to let you all know that in May of this year, after months and years of preparation and working closely together, the Connacht Ulster Alliance partners submitted an application to become a technological university. We hosted an international panel in July, and their role was to challenge and test our application. We should know the outcome of that process in a couple of weeks. Well, weeks or months, I suppose, really, but definitely within hopefully the next 6 to 8 weeks. And all going well, we should be designated a technological university sometime in early 2022. But events like today's and this morning's serve us well, and they remind us of our vision for the new technological university, harnessing our collective strengths for the benefit of stakeholders in the region, even if those collective strengths are distributed across our 8 campuses throughout the northern and western region. Those strengths are in our teaching and learning activities, they're in our research centres, and they're most definitely in our engagements with industry across a whole range of interfaces. Today's event focuses on a couple of really interesting topics, and you have some super speakers lined up today. I had the great privilege of hearing Brenda Romero speaking in Cork a couple of years ago, and she's absolutely inspiring, as indeed are all the speakers. There's an underlying theme, though, if we look beyond the sharp technical focus of venture capital and blockchain. And Professor Joyce O'Connor recently highlighted for me exactly what that was. And for me, it's about striving to achieve a just world. And you might feel that that's a bit of a leap, but bear with me. Deploying blockchain technologies to achieve social inclusion is one theme, again, that you might not be expecting to hear about today, but again, I wouldn't be surprised. There will be a few surprises up Professor O'Connor's sleeve, and it is a real focus for many of the blockchain applications globally today. After a phenomenal weekend for women's sport, whether it was the achievement of our Paralympians, Europe's success at the Solemn Cup, or the stunning All-Ireland success of the Meath ladies football team, it's important to reflect that globally, it's not a just world. Hard-won equalities are being eroded all over the world, and we can't afford to be complacent. We see well-off societies, and I mean well-off not just in financial terms, as being just societies with underlying principles of equality. There's ample evidence that female-led companies tend to perform well financially, but they also tend to promote diversity and inclusion. So why don't we see more of them if they're good for society? And this is also a topic that you'll be hearing a lot more of later this morning. So finally, as I was driving in this morning, I'm hearing there about sun in Galway and hopefully sun everywhere else in the country. It was actually very foggy as I was driving in. But one of the brilliant things about driving through a foggy morning is that you know it's going to be followed by a beautiful sunny day. And for us, as we emerge from the fog of the last 18 months, you'd like to think that we've the confidence that there is sunshine going to follow. But that really gives us the opportunity, and it challenges us to renew our efforts to create the kind of just society, harnessing technologies, but the kind of just society that will see our regions and indeed our country truly thrive. And that's it for me. I wish you a wonderful morning. Gormagad, August O'Reilly.
Thank you so much indeed, Orla. And I have to say, you know, I have heard Dr. Orla Flynn speak on a number of occasions at this stage, and every time I'm intrigued at how she can draw from business, sport, and even the weather to give us words of inspiration right here this morning, live from Galway. So to move from a foggy, yes indeed, and a warm west of Ireland, we're going to be soon moving into the capital of France, right over to Anne Ravanona. But before we do that, just because we had such a really super reaction there to our first question, where we asked you what positive things did you want to embed into normality arising from what we learned in lockdown. We're also going to ask you another question just to get a sense of where people are at on their funding journey. So again, can I ask the team please to share the screen, and if you could, to then please make sure that we now share our second question. Okay, so our second question is asking, where are you at in terms of the funding menu? Okay, so I'm just going to ask the team, we just move on one slide there. So if you just move on one slide to the right there on our Mentimeter, and so if you just press the right hand arrow, we'll get that right across. And what we're going to do then is we're going to ask you that question. Okay, yep, there we go. So if we could now just run that, and we would really love to hear your answer to this question. So what stage are you at when it comes to your funding journey? Because as I say, when we hand over to Anne, she is going to take you all around the funding menu, but we just particularly are interested to hear where you personally are at. So we're just going to give you a moment there to answer that. Okay, okay. Interesting there. Okay, so We have some people at almost every stage. Okay. Almost every stage. Let's just going to hear it from others. And I also see that we have some people as well who are sending their own experience there into the chat. So let's just see where people are at. Again, by the way, just in case you missed the link on how to join Mentimeter, if you go up to the top of the screen, you'll see there. If you go to www.menti.com and then use the code 92489630, you will be able to participate in that. Okay, so what we can see is that people are, generally speaking, at an early stage of where they're at in their journey. Okay, that seems to be where people are at. And then we also have some people who've started raising money, some people who've applied for funding avenues, some people who've taken some action. And then we also have one person as well who's had early conversations. Okay, so on that note, I am now going to introduce Anne Ravanona. Like I mentioned, she is CEO of Global Investor. And she's going to join us live from Paris for a very interactive session right here on Zoom. She's going to talk about the specific steps that you can take to progress, how to find your allies and build your tribe in this way. Bienvenue, Anne, over to you.
Merci. Hello, wonderful Galway, Ireland, and welcome from Paris. I sound a bit like the Eurovision. Well, why not? Isn't that a great symbol of Europe and all of us working together? So today I'm going to be sharing quite a few tips and tricks. I want you to hold on to your seatbelts, everybody, because this is going to be an interactive session. I am here to serve you and to share as much as I can about this whole funding game, this funding journey, so that you go away knowing a lot more than you did before you started. And thank you very much, Susan, for sharing the poll. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to invite you when we are, as I am talking, if we could please share any of your reactions to what I'm going to say. I'd love you to share them in the chat box. I know we're using the other tool for other things, but for me, here in the chat box is where I can actually, I'm going to follow what you're saying. All right. So are you with me? If you are, type yes. I think you've had your coffee. If you haven't had your coffee or tea, you're going to be. Everybody's rest. Okay. So let us go. Let's move forward. Okay. So I want to start off by asking, who are you? Okay. I want to know how many of you in the audience have already set up your business. So if you already set up your business, say yes, 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 yes. Tell me now. Okay. And if you haven't, just say no, that's fine, or not yet. Totally allowed. Brilliant. Okay. So we're talking to a lot of people who've already taken that plunge. So congratulations. I love it. Catherine's putting in her URL, not yet Louise and not yet Anne-Marie, but I love it that I love it's the not yet, because that means you're going to do it. Okay, so I think you're going to get a lot out of this session. Why should you even bother listening to me? Well, I am a woman entrepreneur like all of you. I'm in the same seat as you, and as well as I'm an advocate for us, for women entrepreneurs around the world. And I set up my company, Global Investor, 13 years ago to help demystify the whole funding journey about just everything about funding, specifically for women entrepreneurs, because 13 years ago, nobody was talking about this stuff. There were not all these programs. And I was just like, okay, we gotta solve this problem. And I learned that this access to finance and this funding piece is a big, big issue. And I'm not going to scare you with the statistics because we're here to be positive. I'm going to give you loads of good juice for moving forward. But why should you listen to me? Because I am, yeah, Sylvia, it is a mysterious secret. It is like a dark art. I've given some speeches and topics where I call it like demystifying the dark art of funding. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow, this morning in this session. Not tomorrow, that would not be good. So why you should talk to me, you can check out, I've done a TEDx talk on this, but also I'm an advocate for us at policy level on a global level. I've just come back from the G20, the very first Women's Empowerment Conference in Italy 2 weeks ago, where I was representing the W20, which is the engagement group for women to the G20, where we're saying to the G20 countries, oi, you got to put these policies in place to help women entrepreneurs. And of course, I was pushing the access to finance piece. So that's why you should listen to me. But most importantly, and I think you hear it, I'm passionate about this. I'm here for you I care about this deeply, and I want to leave the world a better place when it comes to access to funding for women entrepreneurs. So what do you already know about funding? We've already done the poll, which is excellent. And I can see it's kind of mixed. There's lots of different people here, which is good. And some of you have already dipped a toe into it. You've started to watch things, some of you have already started fundraising, which is excellent, and we're going to do some more. Not much yet, says Sarah. Don't you worry, Sarah, you're in the right place. You're going to know a lot more about it at the end of it. So, okay, very first, and it's this important question, how do you feel about this whole process about looking for funding? Type it in the chat box. Tell me exactly how do you feel. For those of you who haven't done it yet, what's your feeling about it? Nervous, overwhelming, nauseous, whoa, lost, overwhelmed, quite daunting, insecure, excited, it's tough, intimidated, yeah, a pain, unsure what direction to go, naive, yeah, that's because you're just at the beginning, Rick. Positively challenged, I like that. Confused, time consuming. Seems like a lot of funding is for tech and product, not services. Yes, Michelle, that can be the case and certainly what people feel. Very demanding of your time, but actually good in terms of how it makes you look at your business. Right. And it feels like it's not for my business and out of my comfort zone. Okay, so that's very important. Thank you for sharing that, everybody. You see, isn't it fascinating? First of all, we're all in the same boat. All of the things that you feel about this whole funding process is something that a lot of women entrepreneurs feel around the world. So you're not alone, okay? That's the first thing. And it's normal because guess what? We're going to ask you to do things you haven't done before. And it's like going back to school, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it? It's literally, we're back to school time now. When you start going on this funding journey, hold on a second. You set up a company to solve a problem for a specific group of people. You didn't set up a company to go looking for funding. That's a whole different ball game. And so that's why we're going to teach you some tips and tricks today, and just to demystify this whole stuff. Okay. So before we start, because this is a very important question, and thanks for interacting with me here. When should you look for funding? When do you think you should be looking for funding? So type in the chat box, because it's right. What have you said earlier? Straight away, says Sylvia. Yeah. Only when you need it, says Trish. Regularly, all the time, says Rosie. Yeah. Well, I mean, what I would say to you is whenever you can, says Michelle. I don't know, says Danny. Okay. So when should you look for funding? I think at key pivots on the journey. Yes, that's a good point. You can start making connections early on. It's a long process. When your business reaches the stage, your funding will allow you to grow and scale. When it's specific to your business, 9 to 12 months before you need it and before you need it. Okay, so we've got a mixed bag of answers, but you know what? You're all kind of right in different ways. So let me kind of phrase that. The first thing that's super important to kind of realize is, what kind of company do you want to become? If you want to become a company where you are hiring and you have a team of anything up to 20 people, 20 onwards is what we call employer companies. It's where it starts to really scale. But if you want to build up from beyond yourself and you want to create jobs in order to bring your product or service to the world, and it really is beyond yourself, that's when you got to start thinking about funding. And again, not every single type of business is adapted to it. So if you have a hairdressing salon or you want to set up a series of them in an area, that was one kind of mentality, one type of funding. If you have a tech company, that's another type of funding. If you have a consulting company, different types of funding. But what's important is to realize, and we're going to kind of pull back the veil on some of this stuff, that funding isn't for everybody, right? So you got to be clear what kind of company you want to become. That's very important. The very first thing, how big do you want to be? Do you want to be 5, 10, 20, 20 plus, 100 plus? Because depending on your growth trajectory and how you envision your company, that's going to influence the type of funding you're going to go. Does that make sense? Keep typing in the box because I like to hear. Okay. And so thank you, Sylvia. So yeah, before we begin, I want to share with you a really important message from this woman entrepreneur. So Reshma Shetty is a woman I interviewed maybe 2 or 3 years ago for the Huffington Post. And I loved what she said. She says, remember, fundraising, it's a means to an end. It's not the end in itself. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's that. This is a tool, all right? So it's a means to an end, not the end in itself. Your most important job is building your company, one that is doing something important. Does that make sense? I totally love it. And guess what? When I interviewed Reshma, she has a biotech firm. And when I interviewed her on her funding journey, she had already raised a lot of money, like several millions. And she says, I'm going to become a unicorn. We are going to become $1 billion company within 3 years. And guess what? She did it. I'm not saying to say everybody needs to be a unicorn, $1 billion company. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is her message really resonated with me. And I thought it was useful for you to hear it from a very, very successful woman entrepreneur, that this is funding as a means to an end. It's not all about it. And you know, often in the press, have you ever had this impression in the press, like looking for funding, these big fundraisers, all these guys and male entrepreneurs that we put on the cover of all the magazines? It's a real testosterone driven thing, isn't it? It's like, wow, raising the money, it's what it's all about. And it can be glorified, but it's more than that. I want you to think about it as a tool for your business, a tool to help you grow. So what does this look like? The first thing to say is that, good news, this whole funding stuff, it's a game. And guess what? You can learn a game. All right. Does that sound funny to you, that this funding is a game? I mean, earlier on, people are saying, I'm intimidated by this, I'm overwhelming, I feel naive, I don't know. Ugh. I want you to approach this. This is a game and you can learn how to play it. And guess what? In the funding game, there are rules, there are players, and there's the prize. And we're going to go through all of these different things so that you'll have a better understanding of this funding game by the end of our session. So the rules, I'm going to share some of the rules. There's certain things you got to do and certain steps you got to go through that you just can't compress or you just can't skip, right? There are some rules that everybody is held accountable to, whether you're a male or a female entrepreneur. There are the players. Who are the players? Who do you think are the players? So they are the entrepreneurs looking for the funding. They are the investors, who are the ones who have the money bags and who can give them the funding. There are like the governments, there are your clients, there are your partners. There's so many players in this funding game that it's important to kind of identify them and then build a relationship with them. And the prize. So that's why I wanted to share Reshma's message earlier. Funding is it's a means to an end, not to an end to itself. In this funding game, funding is a prize. The money is the prize. The network, the knowledge of your investors is the prize. But mainly, that's why there's a picture of rocket on this. It's rocket fuel. Funding and this funding game is all about getting rocket fuel, getting money as a tool, as fuel to fuel your growth, to build your business. That makes sense? Yes. And Claire is saying competition. Yep, they're part of the players. You got it, Claire. All of this is part of this funding game. Okay. So now let's kind of go into more detail. I would love to kind of give you this framework to think about funding. So funding is a perspective, like a mindset. I had to have 3 Ps, so I changed it to perspective. So it's perspective, a mindset. It's a process. Everybody needs to go through this process. And it's a performance. That's where the pitch stuff comes in and the relationship building comes in. All right, so let's look at each of these things. The first thing to say is that funding is all about a mindset. It's a perspective. And that's why I've put the key words here: people, peers, and partners. The first thing that you need to kind of demystify is funding isn't about accounting and finance and hard conversations. At the end of the day, funding is about people. Okay, it's about relationships that you build with people. And when I say peers, the next part, the peers, I want you to, in any of your interactions with potential funders, and they could be banks, they could be government bodies like the Leo offices. They can be angel investors, venture capitalists, and I'm going to explain what all of those are. But really, whenever you are entering into a conversation with potential investors, I really want you to go in there feeling that they are my peers. We are at the same level. They're not up here and we're down here because I'm the entrepreneur looking for the money. Yes, there's a power game, but guess what? They are peers who are actually looking for great companies to fund and to invest in. Wouldn't you agree? So really what's important is like, you need to be going into the mindset, okay, I want to talk to my peers and they are my potential partners. Okay, very important. My investors are partners. If they're the right investors for me and my company, they're going to help me to grow. So I want you to go in thinking about that. They are people, peers, and partners. That's part of it. Now, all right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, right? I did say that funding is a process. And really what is super important is to see this slide is, I hope, going to be really, really important for you all to remember. So take screenshots if you're not. This is one of them. And I will be sending, of course, these slides to the Empower Her team, so you can ask them for them afterwards, just to reassure you all. Okay, so I mentioned that this funding game is a process. And there are 5 key steps. These are the 5 key steps that I have identified from working with women entrepreneurs for the past 9 years. Okay, I have interviewed hundreds of them about how they actually got the money. I have been a coach to many of them. I've been a judge in pitch competitions. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at INSEAD Business School, etc., etc., etc. So over the years, I've distilled this into the funding process into these 5 key steps. So the first one is you need to understand this funding game, and that's what we're talking about at this point. Who are the rules? What are the rules? Sorry. Who are the players? What's the process? What's the prize? The second one is we need to understand the funding menu, which are the sources of funding, and we're going to look at that. The third one is you need to then, once you understand the game and the players, you understand the sources of funding that are out there, then you need to start thinking, okay, who's going to be the right investor, the right funder for me? Does that make sense? Keep chatting to me in the chat box because I know you're hanging on to my words, but I love to see you're still there. So once you've understood, thanks, Emma, once you understand the funding menu, then find the right investor. Then in parallel, while you're looking to find the funding, finding the right investor, you have to have your funding toolkit ready. So let's come back to that. The funding, you have to find the right investors, which means you have to do your homework. This is a process and it's work. Part of the rules of the game is you got to do some work on this, and you have to do your investor research. And you have to study them by sector, by stage, and by geography, because investors like to invest that way. They invest in business opportunities by sector, by stage, and by geography. So keep that in mind. The funding toolkit is around, okay, what are the tools that I'm going to need to interact with those potential investors? I'm going to need my pitch deck, I'm going to need my exec summary, and my financials. And then once you've got those things, you need to build your funding strategy. Right, I'm going to raise this type of money, this type of round, and then what's my actual action plan? How am I going to do it? Thanks, Marianne. This is a great diagram. And Trish is saying worth looking at who gives the biggest percentage. If it's a grant, it's 70% better, 50 better than 50%, even if there are more hopes to jump through. Trish, we're going to go through the funding menu, and we're going to talk about the different sources and the pros and cons of the different sources. Okay, so good points. So love what you're sharing. Okay, so I want you to remind yourself, this is the process. This is the journey that you're going to go on if you decide to go for funding. What is the funding menu? Susan said earlier, I'm going to share this funding menu with you. So these are the sources of funding, the different sources of funding, and that's why I call it the funding menu, that exist to help you fuel your business. And that's why at the very beginning, I said, what type of business do you want to become? Because depending on the type of business you want to become, that's going to influence the type of sources of funding you're going to look at. Okay, does that make sense? So you'll see I've put a blue line to the right because I'm going to go through these different sources of funding, what they are. because the ones to the further over to the left, all the way to the right, it's kind of according to your stage. If you're early stage, you want to be looking at all the sources of funding, and I can see my little blue dot moving. So everything that's to the left of the blue line. When you're in the growth stage, that's when you're going to be looking at the other stuff, right? So if we look at the sources of funding so far, these are the ones that actually women entrepreneurs use. And these are the ones I have studied the funding journeys of highly successful women entrepreneurs who've raised a lot of money, the millions and the gazillions, okay? And these are things that they have used. What's important to know is that just because you've got the whole menu doesn't mean you need to eat everything, does it? When you go to the restaurant, you're not going to pick everything there. You need to choose the menu items that you feel like it, but also in our case for funding that makes sense to you. Does that make sense? So let's look at it. Microfinance is more for those early stage women entrepreneurs in developing countries that don't have access to these other tools. So I'm not going to talk about it here. The best source of funding, ladies and gentlemen, is a paying customer. Never forget it. If you can get as much money from your paying customers, that's the best thing. Then you don't have to give up your equity. You don't have to give up shares in your company. Very often when we begin, we start off by using our own savings, using our own credit cards just to keep us going, and maybe doing keeping our job full time or going part time as we build our business. Have any of you done that? Say who's used what so far. I want you to put in the sources you've done that. Yeah, Michelle says, without a business, we don't have. Yeah, we can't forget those paying customers. Never forget them. They're the number one. Right. So once you have those paying customers, usually that puts you in good stead to start thinking about getting a bank loan, right? Yeah, so Catherine says she kept her job. She's used savings. Eileen has used a part-time job. You see, super important, very important. So bank loans can be a really useful tool. Now, I want you to think, okay, when you think bank, you think debt. Ooh, I'm getting into debt. I don't want to have debt. Actually, when you're thinking of your funding menu, you want to be thinking about the two different families, two different, let's say, yeah, criteria. Debt instruments and equity. So debt is when you will get a loan and you got to pay it back, right? Equity is when investors put money into your company for shares, but you don't need to give the money back. You give them the money, they get the money back through dividends. They get it back through the profits, a share of the profits that you make. But when you get the money, when you give up equity, you do it in a different way. And it's important to have both. Deirdre says she's doing loans, works, consultancy, and paying customers and loan. Yeah, so in the early stages, this is, and me too. I came all this way up to bank loan, Then you'll see friends and family. Okay, what's friends and family around, guys? Type it in, friends and family. It's like the word suggests. That's when you get your, sometimes you see it as friends, family, and fools, but really it is the people who know and love you, who are willing to put the first level of investment into your company, right? And they kind of know that they're not going to get it back for 3 to 5 years, if at all. It's a high risk when you're early stage, but they can often be your very first round. And don't be fooled by it. Friends and family round can be quite substantial. It can be, so it is free help, yes, Marianne, but it's also money. That's when they actually invest into your company, and they will give you loans, although we'll actually take some shares in your company, right? So friend and family round is usually one of the first things you'll do when you're funding your company. So don't neglect it. Now, I know some entrepreneurs have said to me, I'm not comfortable taking money from my friends and family. I want to be able to sit down at Christmas dinner and be able to look them in the face and not feel that they're like judging me and saying, okay, when am I getting my money back? You know, so there's that. So just think about it. Does it feel right for you? If you can, if you do have friends and family, and when I say friends, former employers, former colleagues, people you work with in associations, in your bigger network, you need to look at that. Then you need to look at grants, foundations. Now, one of you earlier on, forgot your name, sorry, because I'm looking at the chat as it comes, mentioned grants. Grants are a great tool to get you some funding. Now, and you could say, oh, it's free money, it's grant. Now, it's not as simple as that. I would say the pros is it's free money, you don't have to pay it back. The cons are that it's very time consuming to fill in those grant applications, very time consuming. Sometimes you have to fill them in over and over and several times before you get a grant. Also, with some grants for a significant amount of money, it's a drawdown mechanism. So they only give you the money once you've spent it. So you have to have enough money to invest in your marketing, in your recruitment, etc. And once you've got the bills to show it, then they give you the money. So yes, look at grants, go into it with your eyes open and know there's a lot more to it than just applying, right? Then look at government bodies. Of course, Enterprise Ireland comes straight away. Now, they have different programs. I'm not going to go through them now, but what's very important is for you to say, state bodies have great, the Leo programs and so on. Do check them out. What can you apply for? Are there innovation grants at the very early stage, research grants that you can apply for? And then later on, when you're in the growth stage, what can you go for? So Trish, I mentioned grants, and it is very time consuming. They can be very small or limited. They can cause cash flow issues too, but are worth looking at which ones offer more than 50%, such as Leader if you're in a rural or a disadvantaged region. Thanks, Trish, for sharing that. So check that out. Okay. New Frontiers is also a great option. Yes, Tony, totally agree. So check out those resources in the chat. And guess what, guys? You can record the chat. Press the little 3 buttons there beside the smiley face and it says save chat. So you don't have to take notes about all this. You can keep all those precious resources we're sharing in the chat. Okay, so government bodies, then we go to crowdfunding. Now crowdfunding, there are different types of crowdfunding, but it's a great tool to raise money. And guess what? Women entrepreneurs are highly successful at it because there's a lot of storytelling, relationship building. Now, there are different types of crowdfunding, donation-based, where people donate to a cause, right? Without anything. There's reward-based, where like you pay in advance for a product or a service that's being developed, but you're going to get something. And then there's equity. So that's when you exchange, you put money into the pot, the crowdfunded pot, in exchange for percentage of the company. It's very interesting to check out crowdfunding, and I want you to know you cannot go into it lightly. Crowdfunding, doing a crowdfunding campaign takes about 3 months preparation. And actually we have a whole course on that at Global Investor that you can check out, to really, from somebody who's done 5 of them, the whole gamut, and very successfully. But I would just say crowdfunding is a great tool. Check it out. It takes a lot of time. Do not then, let's look at accelerators. Where they empower her women here at the GMIT accelerator. Yes, fantastic. Awaken Hub have just started a new accelerator. There's several female founder programs on the island of Ireland, and then in other good countries, like also in the UK. And now with COVID, lots of things are going online, which actually makes it easier for women entrepreneurs to apply. Because actually the fact that a lot of us are mothers, I am too, it's tricky. So do check out accelerator programs. They put you through this boot camp, usually about 3 months, through some kind of several hoops you have to go through. And at the end of it, they have a thing called a demo day where you pitch to investors and you can potentially raise quite a lot of money. Check out the best accelerators in Ireland. It's worth it, but you got to really do your homework, because again, you have to invest 3 months of your life on every day in that accelerator. Pitch competitions, great way to get free money and visibility, because a lot of pitch competitions in Ireland and internationally will give you money. And I know one woman entrepreneur, she raised $200,000 just by winning pitch competitions. Seriously. So it is something to look at. Don't neglect it. If you get good at your pitching, which you'll need to anyway, check it out. Then we have the angel investors. What's an angel investor, guys? Thanks, Sandra. She's sharing the Westbic with the Competitive Start Fund. And Anne is talking about NDRC Pre-Accelerator, which is amazing. That's great. Share your resources in the chat. So angel investors are private investors who invest their personal money into your company. So it's a person like you and me who's investing some of their hard-earned cash into your company. And they're also investing their time, their energy, their network. So angel investors are, they tend to, so they're private investors. They can sometimes be in groups called syndicates or in networks, angel networks. So you need to check those out. But you need to know that angels come in all shapes and sizes, and some of them have experience and some don't. So you want to be careful when you're looking at the angels that you want to potentially get funding from. You know, if you look for the ones who've got the experience, right? Make sure, how do you find angels? Yes. How do you find, okay, LinkedIn, yes, Anna. LinkedIn is a great place. Angel List, I'm going to type it in. The places to find them: Angel List, Gust, Crunchbase. These are all fantastic resources. Astia, loads of other stuff, and Sinead's sharing stuff with from Awaken Hub, their accelerator. That's super. I'm so proud of you, Sinead, and Mary, and everybody on the team there. So angel investors, they have many different, there are many type of them, and there are now many networks that are women angel investors. So check them out. Astia is one of them. Golden Seeds is another one. There are many. Go Beyond, I'd like you to check out Go Beyond. It's an European angel investment network, and definitely check them out. Denise McQuaid, an Irish woman, is the CEO there. I'm not saying it's going to get you investment, but it always helps. She's super. Sifted as well, Deal Room, excellent resources, Helena. That's where you're going to hear what goes on. And I'll share the link to our newsletter to learn more about, because we share sources of funding every single week in the GIH newsletter, which is free. The other later stage source of funding are venture capitalist funds, and they are professional investors. There's a big difference, like they're professional investors investing bigger amounts of money, and they have to have higher returns. So they need a minimum 10 times return on their investment. So they only invest in the high growth companies that are sure to take off, right? So that's what VCs are. And family offices, like the name suggests, these are kind of special investment offices for very, very rich families. So if you can imagine the O'Reilly family is very wealthy. Other big international families, they have a thing called a family office who manage their wealth, and part of that goes into high growth entrepreneurs. As private equity as well. So this is some of the funding menu. We can't go into mega detail here, but at least you now know all the things you have to look at. So Trish, okay, Caroline, since she can't save the chat, maybe Susan will pick that up and see if you can do it. I can do it on my end, maybe because I'm a panelist. Trish wants, if you want to access to expertise more than funding, is it still worth going angel investors? So yes, Trish, but then in that case, they're not angel investors. If you want advice, you can get advisors on board, and you can tap into angel investors for advice who don't invest in your company. Yes, you can. And in fact, you need to be looking at investors because they bring a lot more than just money. Okay. So now let's kind of go through, what do investors look for, right? Because I want to run through these things to make sure you got the meat. They want to know who you are, what you are, like what you're building, and what's your why, who are you serving, why are you building this company, how are you, and then the how are you building it, what are the things you need to look at, right? So these are the key things, the DNA of a deal, I call it. These are the key things that the company wants, that investors want to know about you, your company, and your context. They want to know who you are, your background, who's on your team. They want to know who are you serving, who are your customers. They want to know what are you building, like in what sector, what are you trying to do? You want to know your big why. Why are you doing this? Why is it important to you? And why are you the right team for them to move this company forward? And then how you're doing it. What are your key milestones on that journey? So check out this slide, keep it in mind. I wanted to share, more importantly, what they don't want, because that's a very important thing. The major turnoffs are these ones. I think it's super important for you to know this. They hate it when you don't know your numbers. So you need to know your numbers. And when you're presenting your financials, you need to say, these are the assumptions behind them. If you have an unrealistic valuation, that's kind of, if you kind of go in saying, I'll give you 5% of my company, but you have to pay $500,000. What? That values your company at several millions, and it's not realistic. So that's the valuation game. We can't go into detail here, but I don't like when you have an unrealistic valuation. You need to know the size of your market. Somebody mentioned competition earlier on, and that's very important. And this is in the players. You have to say who your competitors are. If you are a game changer and you're creating a new segment, you may not have direct competitors, but you'll have indirect competitors. It's how are people solving that problem now without you. So you need to have your competitors on that side. So people who come in and say, I have no competitors, it's rubbish. Thanks, Helena. She's put in the H-band, Halo, and all that good stuff there. Super, super, super. Investors hate it when you don't answer questions, when you play the weak victim, or when you're too arrogant. Hate that too. They hate it if you lie or exaggerate information. Women don't tend to do this, but I'm just giving you the general stuff, and if you're not coachable. So that's what they don't want. Now, we were going on our journey, and here we are to the performance. So in the performance, we need to, so basically in the performance piece, this is the whole part. We said was it is a perspective, it's a process, and a performance. The performance is the pitch, okay? Remember, when you're pitching, you got to pitch your business opportunity, not the products and services. You're pitching your company, an opportunity to invest in your company to help grow your company. Very important how you go in with this, with the pitch. And you need to be pitch ready, not pitch perfect. Please don't spend hours making beautiful slides if when you deliver it, it doesn't come across, right? So make sure you practice on that. So these are 2 key tips on the pitch. Here are the 12, 15 key slides you need to have in your pitch. We won't have time to go through them in detail, but you'll have them on the slide. So you'll see this is the key information you need to have on your pitch, because they help the investors to analyze your business opportunity. And good news, those key things are usually in your business plan that you will have built at the beginning before building your company or as you build it. A key thing on the pitch thing is you need to practice, practice, practice. So yes, get the pitch slides ready, but then you need to get your mental ready. You need to practice, you need to get feedback. And I would really suggest you do some role plays, video yourself. It's torture. Listen, nobody likes looking at themselves. It's torture. But that's a key thing. And wear what you're going to wear on the day, get into it. Okay, can we go back to the 12 slides? Yep, let me go back to that here. Okay, let me pause here for a second. So the key, if you see, this is kind of the journey you're going to take your investors on. So the cover slide needs to have, in one sentence, needs to have your logo in one sentence, what you do for whom. So you say, we're a B2B marketplace making fabulous coffee for busy moms, for example. You need to have the one liner about what is your company. And that can be on the cover slide or on a slide on its own. Then you need to talk about the problem. How big is the problem? Who are you solving? What's the total addressable market? Why are you the right people to solve this problem? Why do you care? Then you go into the market size. So you say, this is the problem. This is why it's and how big it is. This is important. The how big it is the next slide as well, which is on the market size, because depending on the type of investor you're looking at, they'll only talk to you if you're going for big markets, right? So you have to talk about the market size. Then you say, and here's our solution. So we started off, here's the problem. Here's how big an opportunity is in the market it is for this problem. Here's our solution, how we're going to solve that problem. Here's how it works. So you can show slides, do a demo. Here are our customers. This is when you need to show traction. This is the traction piece. Here are our customers, our metrics, who we're serving, our revenues, the key milestones, the KPIs, the key performance indicators. Very important now because this is how you can see this is a business pitch. It's not about the product. Here are our competitors, the direct and indirect. Here are our killer USP, our unique selling points. What makes us different to all the other people there? For example, I'm wearing woman entrepreneur. Melissa Curvy, wonderful Irish woman entrepreneur. Swell bottles with the Wonder Woman, but the swell bottles, these are women entrepreneurs. You kind of need to say, okay, who are your competitors? Who are your direct and indirect competitors? What are your key USPs? What's your business model? Meaning, how are you going to make money? What's your go-to-market strategy? That's the marketing piece. This is how we're going to use our social media. This is how we're going to use partnerships, etc., etc. Who's on our team? And the team slide can be earlier or later. If you've got a really strong team, put it in earlier. Our ask. How much are you asking for? Super important. Please never put a pitch or do a pitch where you don't ask for money. Please don't. Otherwise, don't pitch. Okay. And one of you mentioned, Anna Carmody was saying, what about women entrepreneurs not asking for enough money? I see it all the time, unfortunately. I see women entrepreneurs asking for 500,000 all over the world. They kind of settled on one figure. You need to figure out how much money you need to keep you going for 18 to 24 months. And then you put that figure. And if it is over $1 million, don't be scared of it. You could say, and I will raise it in different tranches. So I'll get the first 500K here, etc., etc. Okay. In the pitch stuff, coming back to that, I wanted you to say you need to practice, that's super important, but the other key thing is you got to prepare the questions. The Q&A section with the investors is super important, so you got to prepare those tough questions. Really, what are the tough ones you don't want to get? Make sure you do that, and really prepare those answers. So remember, we've been here, we've talked about the funding game, the funding menu, how to find the right investor, the funding toolkit, we've talked a little bit about the pitch deck, and then the funding strategy and action plan you need to build on your own, right? So very important as we come into the last few minutes. How are you going to do all that stuff we just did? You got to build your tribe, okay? Tony's saying expects questions on competition, be prepared. Yes, Tony, on competition and on lots of other stuff. You need to know your competitors, you need to know your markets, your products. Lou is saying, my clients love it when we turn their pitching nerves into excitement. They outsource the worry. Yeah, it's true. So when you're nervous, pitch it, channel it and say, okay, I'm going to outsource the worry. I like that. Thanks, Lou. Okay, so I want you to build your tribe. How are you going to play this funding game? You're going to build your tribe. You cannot do it alone. And there are credible resources at your fingertips. So I've mentioned our friends at Awaken Hub because they are on Ireland serving Irish women entrepreneurs. Of course, the Empower program goes without saying, couldn't be not be there. Global Invest Her, I'm going to share some of the resources we have. Most of them are free, so check them out. Meetups. You can see lots of local meetups online and so on that are about funding and women entrepreneurs. Eventbrite. Since COVID, many webinars have gone online and events have gone online. So you need to kind of check out that as well. Have some call outs for you. And of course, do not forget LinkedIn. Now, I want to say one thing. We talked about networking here. You need to use, I want to give you a story. When I was on a webinar, I was a guest, I was just an attendee like you are today. I was a participant and I was listening to 4 big venture capitalists in the US speaking. And I was in there chatting in the chat box, giving my comments and sharing my LinkedIn and sharing my link to my company. Say, yes, we do that. We're trying to work that. And I said, it's super important to chat in the chat box. You can network with so many people here. What happened was, as I was chatting, people started to notice, oh, she's saying some interesting things. Oh, who is she? And because I put my LinkedIn a few times into it, on the back of that one participation, I was able to set up interviews with 5 investors after one participation, just because I was sharing my knowledge. I was saying, you know, who I am, whom I'm serving, and I made a call. I said, I want to be talking to you. And they came back to me, right? So use the chat box when you come to these things. Build your tribe also when you're doing these things, okay? Anna is saying, little off point, something no one talked to me about, even coming off many programs, is company structure, how the limited company is set up in terms of share price before taking on investment. Most people set up €100 share price at first. Yeah, so the whole cap table stuff, Anna, we're not going to have time, unfortunately, to go into it here, but it is really important to, you know, to be careful of who you take on as a co-founder. Be careful of how much money percentage you give to the co-founders. Always make sure that you've well over 51%. A guiding principle is this: on each of your rounds of funding, you want to give up no more than 15% maximum of your capital. That's why you need to have 100% or 90% before you start, right? You need to, or a high percentage. Don't take my numbers as gospel, please. You know, it's different for everybody. See, Michelle's doing there. She's saying she's happy to connect. That's it. Come on, guys, put in your LinkedIn, connect with everybody in. Okay. And Eileen is saying a lot of her network has been created from webinars and following up with connections I've made at events. So please do it, right? So that's why you need to build your tribe. Here are some resources we have built for you at Global Invest Her. So I've put the LinkedIn, the URLs here as well. So we have built many things with loads of free webinars, podcasts, newsletter. We have created a directory, which is a global directory of women entrepreneurs so that you can be found by investors and by clients. Okay, so check it in here. I am putting it in the link Now check out the directory. You can apply to be featured. We have over 1,000 women from 50 countries and 75 sectors in there. And very soon we're coming out with our directory of list of all of investors. So stay tuned, check us out there, okay? We also have a community that you can check out the investor community of all the links here. We have an academy and so on and so forth. So just make sure that and the key thing is that all of our resources at Global Investor are in English, made by women entrepreneurs for women entrepreneurs, and always with that angle. So check out a lot of our resources. Now, as we wrap up, keep networking, keep putting in LinkedIn. I'm only seeing a few. Great, Aveline, Janine, Grania, fabulous. They're all coming in, stick them in there. What first step will you take to move forward on your funding journey? Type in, please. Now, we've gone through this funding journey. We've seen this whole process. What's the one step that you're going to next step you're going to take on your own funding journey, whether it's learning or whatever? Trish is saying she is awaiting funding response in the next few weeks. Yes. Okay. Fran is saying absolutely brilliant. Next step, more paying customers. Yes. Happy to connect. Okay, you're all connected, which is cool, but I want you to answer my question. Please, please, please. What's the first step you're going to do on your funding journey? Marianne says she's going to apply for an innovation fund in the next few weeks. Yes. Increase the asks, Anna. Yes. More paying customer, Louise. Yes. Keep coming. Increase the risk. CSF for women. Yes. Next step, researching angel investors. Yes. Catherine. That's it. Do up the realistic financials, paying customers, look for recurring revenue from customers. I love it. I switched you on the customers big time, didn't I, guys? I'm so happy. It's a cool thing. Fabulous. All right. So keep coming in there. Get my application treated with a GoFundMe for payments. Look up Leo. Yes. Awaiting leader grant application. New Frontiers interview. Yes. Keep going. Tell us more. What else are you going to do? The one step. Okay, and Leo funding, add to an innovation voucher. Excellent, Grania, brilliant. Fiona saying fascinating, definitely more customers, no LinkedIn, but they're sharing her Gmail. Okay, great. So as we wrap up here, now, how do you feel about looking for funding? Now that we've been on this journey, how do you feel about it now? Type in your answers. Energized, says Marianne. Yes, good. Fired up, says Aveline. Yes. Happy, says Claire. I love it. Happy. I love it if we make you happy. Motivated. Yes, Anna. What else? How do you feel now? Excited, much more clear. Brilliant. You can do this. Informed. Terrified, but that's good. More confident, way clearer, more relaxed, inspired. Less fear. Yes. Keep on, keeping on. Yes. Onwards. Yes. Inspired. Yes. Trish says you've explained so many things so clearly. I would now need to explore more angel investors, which I would have not considered before. Yay! It's about opening the mind. Okay, we can do this. Yes, Claire, we can do it. So that is it. And on that, my last message are these. One into you. I don't like pointing, but it's like handing it over to you. Think big, believe in yourself, and ask for more money. Always, Anna, you mentioned it. I think someone else mentioned it. I always say, always, yes, up, Louise. Come on, Claire. Think big, believe in yourself, ask for more money. They are my key points. Susan, I hope I'm still on time, or I hope I haven't done over time. I'm going to stop sharing, but I will be happy to answer and just make sure. Where are we, Susan? Are we good?
Just right on time. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Excellent. So if you want LinkedIn, I'm going to share my LinkedIn and the links to our website and to the directory. Check it out, everybody. And go for it. Happy funding.
Brilliant, Anne. Thank you so much indeed. And I have been agog here looking at the chat. There's been huge interaction. Just as anytime Anne Ravanona speaks, that's always what happens anyway. A couple of things that I would like to pick up on. First of all, in summary of what Anne spoke about, it's a game. It involves a rule book, players, and a prize. I was really struck by your feelings, both before Anne spoke and then afterwards. You were speaking about being nauseous, overwhelmed, excited, and now fired up. Clarity came up there a good number of times, inspired, and maybe considering avenues that you hadn't thought about before. And also spoke about the perspective, performance, and process. And she mentioned perspective is really mindset. There is a performance at the end, but in the middle, it's about being understanding of the process. She also says that when she was asking you, when do you think you'd go for this? I was also interested by your comments. For example, you mentioned key pivots on the journey, and some of you also picked up on the point that it's important to start looking before you need it. And also mentioned that investors look at their opportunities according to sector, stage, and geography. That's also an important point to mention. Would I go into a coffee shop if I'm looking for a pizza? Would I go to a car wash if I'm looking for a pair of tights? Is that if you think about it, that's also the way investors look as well, as what fit have they got with you. She gave this fantastic graphic of the funding menu. And she also pointed out, I picked up on it too, so did loads of you, is that the best form of funding is, of course, a paying customer. And what's an even better form, again, is a profitably paying customer. So that is, if you got that from today, that's also a really important point in terms of A, market validation, but of course, B, as well also from a funding point of view. Now, two opportunities that I wanted to point out. Some of them kind of came up in the chat anyway, but I just want to reiterate them. Number one is the trading online voucher. An awful lot of businesses are able to apply for that, but you have to start off by attending the trading online voucher session that is run by the Leo. That can be extremely informative in its own way. And the other point, I'm picking up on Dr. Orla Flynn's contribution this morning, is of course engaging with your university around research. It's certainly been a journey that I've been on personally. Some of you might have heard me speak about it before. We've applied for innovation vouchers. We're now on our second innovation partnership for our tech startup. So it's certainly one that I would encourage you to go for as well. Now, she also mentioned a range of resources. And by the way, keep the resources coming. If you have more, put them into the chat. There's lots and lots going on there. She mentioned AngelList, Gust, Crunchbase, Astia, Go Beyond, and Golden Seeds. And she said what investors want to know is who you are, what you do, why you do it, and how you're doing so. Then she gave us the detail of the 12 slides. She also spoke about avoiding the major turnoffs. And like you're all doing today as well, she also spoke about building your tribe. Loads of you have been asking us, is this session recorded? Can you access it? Yes, we are recording it right now. It will be up on the website in a couple of days on the Empower Her website. So that will be there at a later stage, all right. So don't worry about that. Don't try to take copious amount of notes. If that's putting you under pressure, relax and enjoy today, and you can always go back to everything afterwards. Okay, now, and of course, you're not leaving us at all, because she is staying with us for the next really important part of today, which is the pitch competition. So let me explain the way in which this is going to work. Before I do, can I just ask the team, will you please share the link for Mentimeter in the chat now so that everybody has the opportunity to click on that before we start. I'm going to name 3 companies. Each of them are going to pitch. Okay, 3 companies. I'm going to name them. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to give you any context. I'm not going to say what they do. I'm simply going to give you the name of 3 companies. I'll mention one, give the name, they will pitch. Second, give the name, they will pitch. Third, give the name, they will pitch. And at that stage, it is over to you to vote the winner. Okay, just want to make that point. So make sure and click on that link on Mentimeter. We will be opening up that link or that specific voting element. We're going to be able to do that. So what's going to happen is when you vote, that won't be visible on screen until we let at least 40 seconds elapse. It is important that you really take the time to think about who should win the pitch, okay? Now, I just want to let you know that naturally enough, each of the 3 women who are going to pitch, it's tough for them. And so by virtue of the fact that they are standing here in front of you and that they are putting forward what they are going to be pitching about is a big deal for them in their own right. So what we're also going to do, and I'm just going to make sure that I have everything here in front of me in order to do that, what we're going to make sure and do is that that we'll share their social media details, because perhaps there is advice you can give, suggestions you can give, etc. So on that basis, it's super important that we leave the power in your hands. And for that reason, I'm obviously not involved. Well, if I drop this hand, a whole load of things are going to fall. But I just want to point out that I have absolutely no involvement in this whatsoever. My sole job is to hand you over to the individual women involved. And again, I just want to check there with everybody to make sure that the link has been shared there in the chat. And yes, we are indeed. And okay. Now, as I say, at this point on, I'm only going to give the name and the business, no context. The context is over to the pictures, and then the power is in your hands to decide who's the winner. After this, after we announce the winner, I'm going to go back to Anne. Anne is going to share some feedback on what she sees, and then we're going to take a coffee break. Okay, deep breath, and that's only me. Never mind the pictures themselves. I'm now going to hand you over to Carla Rosenbrands from Barterkind.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to start off this morning with a story. 2 years ago, I was in Madrid working hard as an English teacher, but finding myself really cash poor. I was stressed out and needed the likes of a yoga class, which was something I couldn't afford. Until one day I had a light bulb moment. I thought, what if I offer an English class in exchange for yoga? And within a week, I was getting yoga, Spanish, massage, entire house cleaned. And the amazing experiences and connections that followed led me to pitching here today. I am Carla Rosenbrands Barterkind, which is an online platform where members can swap their skills and services. So barter is the oldest form of commerce. Why would we need? I'm going to let an example explain. Mr. Paul, a micro business owner, a digital marketer, and while he watched a load of businesses around him close throughout COVID, he managed to survive. But now he's on a strict budget, and he used to outsource a lot, can't afford to anymore. He still doesn't have the skills to cover all aspects of his business, in particular admin and accounts. Now imagine Ivan, he's lost his job because of COVID. So he's sitting idle with his skill set going completely unused. He actually wanted to start up his own online venture, but he couldn't even afford a consultation about it. That was until he found Barterkind, and then match made. Now Ivan does admin for Paul, and Paul is getting Ivan set up online. So it's a win-win, and these guys are both playing on their strengths, so they're using their time efficiently and effectively, not to mention the money they're saving. And I'll give you another example. This one's from Madrid. So imagine Ina from Ukraine, recently relocated, but she doesn't speak Spanish. So she's finding it hard to find work and connect with people. Now picture Patricia. She's a Spanish teacher, freelance, and she finds she has large chunks of time during her classes every day. She should use this time productively, doing housekeeping and whatnot, but her problem is she absolutely hates cleaning. She has a real aversion to it, comes out in hives and everything. It's terrible. And she's considered hiring a cleaner, but couldn't allow herself until she came across Barterkind and match made. Now Ina cleans Patricia's house and Patricia teaches her Spanish, which is something she could not have afforded otherwise. And she's found local friends through the arrangement. And she's educating herself, making herself more employable. So there's a huge social return here as well as financial. So as you can see, barter was a solution to these real life problems for these people. It allowed them to outsource tasks, learn new skills, save time and money, and connect with people authentically. It was also a solution for an individual, a household, or a business. So what we're creating with Barterkind is a high impact app, making services more available to all of our members, because we believe that being cash poor shouldn't be a problem as long as you're skill rich. So to be a part of this community, it's subscription based and basic membership is free. This allows you to one-on-one barter with people, like cleaning for Spanish lessons. Then paid subscription lets you go beyond these limits of one-on-one, and on payment of your small monthly fees, you're given tokens. And with these tokens, you can pay for services, meaning me and you don't have to barter one-on-one, but I can do something for you, you do something for Susan, Susan does something for me. And these trades can be done in person or online. If you have a service you can offer remotely, it's internationally tradable, so you can barter with anyone from anywhere. Now, naturally, we have competitors, but there's an issue with these. They all require or reward you for connecting your Facebook, Instagram, etc. So they're making your data available to these bigger companies. And at Barterkind, it's the exact opposite, with data protection being the most important thing. And to ensure this privacy, we're using blockchain technology so that your trades and your data are completely confidential. We are currently doing a trial phase, and we have 200 signups so far, and some amazing trades happening around Europe, in person and online. So if you would like to be part of this and benefit from barter and be one of the first to use our developed platforms, please go to www.barterkind.com for a free sign up. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Carla. And now we are going to move on to our second pitch, which is Colette McGowan from Collaborate.
2 years ago, I had to sit down and have a really tough meeting with my accountant. That meeting was to discuss whether or not I was going to go bankrupt. A lot of factors and bad decisions had led to that point, but it was at this point that I realized I just couldn't walk away. I believed in my product. I believed in my team. I believed in the problems that we could solve and also the people that we could help. I knew that we could help business owners. I knew that we could help team members, and I knew we could help clients just like you. My name is Colette McGowan, and I am the CEO and founder of Calabro. The next slide, please. So the problem is twofold. So for the accountant, it is about the lack of time and difficulty in staying on top of administration work. And for the client, it is about not having control, visibility, or transparency over their jobs. And some of the secondary problems that the accountants experience is deadlines being missed and just falling through the cracks. And also that the time is lost repeating manual processes over and over. Next slide, please. So our solution is Calabro, which is a practice management software for accountants that minimizes administration work while ensuring transparency, accountability, and visibility. One of our most popular features is the client portal, which allows both the client and the accountant to log in at any time to see where everything is at. Next slide. Our initial target market is accountancy practices in Ireland and the UK with up to 10 team members, which is just under 47,000 practices. And then in 2022, we then aim to target larger practices with up to 50 team members. Our business model is a yearly license fee of €400 per user per year. And some of the reasons why we believe that Calabro is needed is that it can ensure that client satisfaction happens, which results in happy clients and happy accountants. And that ultimately it will save time and money for the practice, which will then filter down to the client. So next slide. We have a dedicated team of 5 in place, and we are all very passionate about solving these problems. We are currently building out our team at the moment, and we have 1 new team member start this week with another new one joining next week. Next slide. We have 3 main competitors, which are based in the UK and in the US, with costs ranging from just under €280 to €600 per user per year. And so for the feedback that we've received so far, some of the reasons why their customers tell us why we're different is that Calabro is extremely user-friendly, with one customer telling us we are simple, well done. And believe me, a simple software is one of the hardest things to do. And another bonus is that they don't need to pay for multiple systems because everything they need is in one place. Next slide. So some of our achievements so far is taking on our first pilot customers, with some signing up even before the software build was even finished. And some of the learnings that we took from our startup journey is that we just didn't do enough market research initially, and then this led to gaps later on within our development phase. Also, personally, the biggest learning for me is that we did not pivot the company sooner. I do think this was a huge turning point in the company. I believe that if we didn't do it when we did, we wouldn't be here today. Next slide, please. So some of our exciting plans over the next 6 months is to launch a pilot phase in October. And we're really excited about this because we just can't wait to get customers stuck into the software and experience it for themselves. This will then lead to our 500,000 investment round later on this year. And that will set us up to scale in early 2022. So next slide. So in the beginning, one of the reasons why I nearly went bankrupt was just not having enough visibility over my accounts. So I'm so glad to be here today, knowing that I can help prevent this for other businesses owners just like you. Thank you.
Colette, and we really appreciate your pitch today. The next person that is right up here in front of you now pitching is Mary McHugh from Irish Online Counselling.
Hi. Our story begins with Leanna. Leanna is a 52-year-old woman, mother of 2 children, one of whom has special needs. And in 2010, she contacted a service that I was working in a voluntary capacity to look for help. She had been Googling the word suicide and came upon our page. Leanna was looking for a way to die that night. Leanna was one of many back in 2010 who, with the evolution of the internet, were finding ways to access support for their mental health. They weren't able to go in and do the conventional face-to-face like many people were. but this went against the whole grain of what my training was as a psychotherapist. It went against our peers and it was frowned upon by them. My name is Mary McHugh, and in 2011, I set up counsellingonline.ie. And this was set up to help people access mental health services who, for whatever reason, weren't able to access them face-to-face. So we were given the power back to the person for them to take charge of that. How our service works is that the client comes to our page and they choose a therapist based on whatever struggle is going on in their lives. And by choosing how to work, so you can work through typing, through typing, which is instant chat, through telephone, or through video. So Leanna had asked me to become her therapist, and I had said there was no way I could do it. But she was in such a bad way that I felt I had no option but to do this. As we began to do our work, it was just amazing to see what was unfolding week by week. Leanna was slowly improving every week that we worked together, so much so that her beginnings were through typing. She then moved on to telephone. Then she moved on to just her seeing me and me not seeing her, to her then seeing me. And we worked together for quite a few years. She was on a lot of medication. So we're giving lots of people like Leanna the opportunity to be able to access. And I suppose our business has grown from strength to strength from there. We have grown 100% year on year. And with the onset of COVID then, there was a huge increase because people were becoming more aware of how to use the internet, and it was giving them great courage to access support for their mental health. In Ireland today, there are 925,000 people struggling with mental health. In the US, there are 47 million. We are at present in a global mental health pandemic, unfortunately. And the goal of counsellingonline.ie is to reach you where you're at. Our motto is wherever you are, we are. So that is geographically, emotionally, or financially. We will do our very best to meet you where you're at. Organically, we are reaching people. We know what we are doing is working. We are looking to scale our business now. We're at a point where we know that we need a robust software platform, and I suppose with my expertise to help us to move on to the next level of our business. I want to finish with Leanna. Leanna documented her work with me in a book of poetry. So this is her whole journey from the very beginnings of being locked in her bedroom, which she was. She had been struggling with bulimia, addiction for 8 months. Her husband was doing the work in the house, to where she is today. Leanna today works full-time. She is on 0 medication for her mental health. So we want to be a huge change. Our job at Counselling Online is to reach people where they're at, to empower them to be able to get their power back again. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mary. And now we are going to get ready to make this open for everybody. Okay, so first things first, please go on to that link that was sent to you there on Mentimeter. Okay, it was sent in the chat. Can I ask the team to please share the screen? And particularly what I just wanted to point out about what we're going to do here is that we're going to share the screen, but we're not going to share the votes as they're coming in. So I'm just going to ask the team to share the screen so that we can see Mentimeter. And that's going to come up there now in a moment. I'm going to make sure that we have at least 40 seconds so that you have a chance to think through who you want to give your vote for. Now, the Mentimeter is now just on screen. Just in case you didn't click on the link, look at the top of the screen, and can you see there, you can participate in this by going to menti.com and putting in the code at the top. The code is 92489630. Okay. Now we are just at about the 25-second mark. We're going to give you another 15 seconds. Now, when I ask the team to reveal the answer, then we're actually going to see all of the votes appear at the one time. Just to remind you that there was 3 people. There was Carla Rosencrantz from Barterkind, we had Colette McGowan from Calabro, and we had Mary McHugh from Irish Online Counselling. Okay, I think I'm picking up the nurses here in the studio right now. They're all affecting me at this stage. Okay, I'm going to do a countdown. We're just going to check in there with the team on the right. Are we all okay? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reveal the winner. Wow, congratulations to Carla Rosencrantz. So you can come back over here. Unfortunately, because we are in the time that we're in, I cannot physically present these to you, but I just want to show everybody that this is what she will be taking home. If you can just look at the camera there, Carla, and well done indeed to Mary also, and well done indeed to Colette. It's a really, really tough thing to do, and they did a fantastic job. So I'm going to leave these here, and we will certainly make sure that you can take them home after they've been sanitized, after I've shown them to everybody. Anne, can we now please go to you? We'll just go back to Anne.
Yeah. I'm here. I don't think you can see me yet. Let me try start. The host needs to let me back on. Okay, start my video. Okay, so can you see me now? Yeah, perfect. Okay, congratulations to all 3 of you. I mean, guys, everybody put in a big round of applause because they were all fantastic. I want to give you some feedback to each and every one of you. Okay, so let me start. I was taking furious notes here. So Carla, excellent topic, very I think you presented it very well, and I think what would help you the next, so I love the way you used the examples of the barters, of the exchanges. You made it very real. What you can do to continue to improve, I would say moving forward, is do share some slides and show us some screenshots of what the actual app looks like. I think that's always helpful for people to actually see it. And you would have seen Colette's presentation. It was helpful for some, because we have all different learning styles. Some people need to be very visual, some are more auditory. So I would say, I think the idea is hot, the market size is hot. So you need to say, okay, this is the market size for bartering worldwide. You mentioned some of the competition. I think you need to have one slide. I've showed you what you need to have. You need to say who's doing it already and how you're different. You said how you were different very well, but you do need to show how you position yourself versus them on that slide, because we need to see that. There is a startup in Brazil who've been doing this for many years called Believe, and a woman entrepreneur as well. And that has been going on for many, many years. So you need to check her out. I would just say, check her out. So you're great at explained the business model, you explained the USP, and you shared your first sign of traction. Fantastic that you had your 200 signups, and you had your very clear call to action was like sign up to test. So that was very clear, and I thought that was very well done. So well done to you, Carla. Colette, I thought that actually you followed the slides that I did about what you need to put in the pitch super well. I think all 3 of you were very good at explaining your customer persona and their problems, and I want to give you huge kudos for that. You did it all very well. So Colette, I loved how you started off with a personal story and say, okay, this is my why. You see, you explained, this is why I set up Calabro, because I had this problem. And I said, okay, if I'd known this information, I would have gone down maybe a different path in my own company. You were very clear about the questions on the problem, the solution, the market, the team, the competitors. Brilliant. All very, very clear. The USP, the milestones and what you're asking for. You followed that super well, and well done. You shared all of that information very clearly. I would say, my particular advice to you, Colette, is have a bit more fun. I know it's serious accounting. You know, try and I would encourage you to kind of say, okay, this is hard. You know, accounting is not a sexy subject for everybody, but all business owners, we need to do it. And we're serving the people who serve the businesses. And I think position your offering in how you're upholding small businesses and to help them grow. Because if they do not have clarity of the information, they can't grow. So that's what I would encourage you to do, is to continue to build on that. I loved, again, the way you very clearly started with your story, ended with your story. Very well done. So excellent stuff. And then Mary, I really connected to everything you're saying. Again, what you do is so important through counseling online. It is exploding now, and we are in a global mental health pandemic. And I'm so glad that you say it that way, because you've got to scream the size of the problem when you did that so well. You see how she gave us the figures? The 925,000 people in Ireland and 45 million in the US. You see how that was like, whoa, whoa, this is a big problem. You see how that really gave her a lot of gravitas to what she was saying. So not just, of course, the impact of the solution and what she's helping to solve, but it's also the size of the market. So that, I think you did extremely well. And again, Mary, sharing the story of Liana from all the way through was very powerful, and how the impact of what you do, that was super important. You mentioned quickly that you're a psychotherapist. I would encourage you to say that right from the beginning. So I have set up, counseling online. I am a psychotherapist. I'm a professional at this, and I saw the need to make this, to be able to do this for more people. And that's why I've built it. And I've been doing it for years. I haven't waited for COVID to do it. I think you need to say that. So I would ask you to embrace that. That was really good. You were very good at explaining the different ways that it works. Again, if you have screenshots, even of the current app online, show them, because it helps people to see it. Also, that you get some great signs of traction. You said that you're going to be looking for funding. You need to scale now and build a more robust tech solution. That's perfect. You're ripe for looking for funding. You need to kind of show your team, build out your team, and make sure that you have some tech people to encourage the tech investors to invest in your product, Mary. Okay, so the other thing is, I thought it was very powerful the way you took us on the journey for Liana from the beginning right to the end, and how your app and your services helped to improve her life, dramatically improve her life, that she even has a life, number one, and actually then dramatically improve it. So they were my key points, and a huge congratulations to you all. I think you were phenomenal, and I cannot wait to see you go further and further. So well done.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Anne. And I have to say, the value of doing a pitch is not just the competition, is exactly what Anne has done right there. It's getting the feedback, getting the experience. I was chatting with them here earlier on, and they were saying, oh, we're buzzing, but we're so nervous, we want it to be over, we wanted to do it now, and all sorts of things like that. So going through that process, as well as actually hearing perhaps your own feedback as well. I've been watching really complimentary comments here in the chat. If anybody has any way that they might be able to help any of the people that we were pitching, reach out to them through their LinkedIn's or through their websites, through whatever method that you can, because that is absolutely what we're here for. Now, we are at the coffee break stage. You probably need one after all of the high-paced activity that we've had this morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a break now, between now, and please be back at 11:15 when you are going to meet Brenda Romero. You're also going to meet Mairead Mackle, and we're going to have a great conversation later on after that around blockchain. Stay tuned. We'll see you back at 11:15. And you're all very welcome back to our conversation here across the morning, where we've just had a fantastic session from Anne Ravanona all around funding. We had a really exciting pitch competition with three fantastic women who put forward their ideas, their hopes and their dreams, and you voted on who should win that competition. Then we got some feedback from Anne as well. Now, before we move into the next stage, I've just, after posting a couple of resources there into the chat, just want to draw your attention to them. We will, of course, make sure that they are available to you all afterwards, but I just wanted to mention some of them. So first of all, Network Ireland, we're really grateful to you for sharing details of this event over the past while. You have your 2021 Businesswoman of the Year Awards that's coming up, and there is also some details in there all around the awards that they have, and also, of course, their various different regional sessions. We also then have Sligo Women in Business as well. So for anybody who's in that region, a fantastic network to join and be part of. And also, of course, there is the Donegal Women in Business Network as well, a thriving group of entrepreneurs and people who are self-employed and people interested in setting up their own businesses in that area. In addition, we also want to let you know that the competitive start is being launched today. A couple of you mentioned that as well, that you've been successful in availing of that. So we just want to let you know that in line with upcoming Enterprise Ireland Competitive Start Fund for Entrepreneurs, Women Entrepreneurship in All Sectors Call It opens today and it closes on the 28th of September. Westbic, in conjunction with Enterprise Ireland, will hold a virtual CSF webinar for potential applicants on Thursday morning, this coming Thursday morning. Put it in your diary, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. In addition, of course, as well, you also heard from Anne from Global Investor, and she gave you a range of links. In addition, She Generate is a pilot program that is being run by Awaken Hub, and it is available across the island of Ireland. Check out their site, you'll find out details of that. And also we want to mention Ireland Together. Ireland Together is a community of peers, a network of entrepreneurs offering support, sharing knowledge and building a stronger ecosystem that enables businesses to thrive. So we will make sure that, that you get access to all of those. I'll tweet them out later on as well. As you can imagine, there is only so many things I can do at the one time, and tweeting as well as talking doesn't quite fit the bill. However, now what I'm going to do is bring you back here right into studio, and we are going to have a conversation around how you build business growth, as well as take risks, as well as overcome setbacks, while preserving that idea of work-life balance as how you define it. Now, before I'm going to introduce you to Brenda Romero, we're going to ask you another question there on Mentimeter. And we'd like for you just to think about this during the conversation, because I want to put this question to Brenda. So if I can ask you there, please, can I go back to the team to share Menti? And the question that we're asking you now is, what risk? Okay, we're just going to move on that slide there up to the next one. And the question that we want to ask you is, what risks are you worried about taking today, in business or otherwise? And please do feed your comments in. I'm going to put those to Brenda, but just remember, the three women that pitched earlier on today, they took a risk by putting themselves and their businesses out to all of you today. So what risk are you maybe concerned about? So Brenda, first of all, you're most welcome. I know that you live here in Galway, so you hadn't far to come.
No.
But we're delighted to have you here. So could you, first of all, Brenda Romero, tell us a little bit about you and your story?
Sure. Let's see. I am CEO of Romero Games, and I'm also a game director, which means I make video games for a living. I've been doing that more or less my whole life. I got into the game industry at 15 and just worked my way up through from game designer to senior game designer to system game designer, and then eventually founded my own company for the first time 12 years ago. And this is my third startup company.
Third startup company.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now that you've just mentioned about the third one, I am just going to put some of the risks that people are worried about here. If we could just share that Menti screen again,
okay.
Because some of them actually relate exactly to setting up a business. I just want to make sure that they're on the screen for everyone to see there. If the team could just share that screen back there again, and I will put those to you. So people are worried about not having the right team members, not getting enough funding, not finding the right partners, taking on more than I can handle. Actually not finding the right team members is coming up again. Fear of failure, a variety of others here. Let's start with that one. You've been to 3 startups thus far. It sounds like you've worked, if you're working in the whole area of video games, that no man or woman is an island there either.
No.
What has been your experience of finding the right team members, or have you ever found the wrong ones?
Absolutely. I mean, the questions that were raised there, the concerns that were raised there, those are all super healthy concerns, right? If those aren't your concerns, then you're not doing it right. I mean, the number one thing for if unless you're just working for yourself and by yourself, it's important to have the right team members with you to make sure that your visions are aligned, that you have the right experience. So I have before founded a company with someone who was really good at what they did, but it just wasn't a good fit for what we were trying to do. So we ended up having to go our separate ways, and that worked out well for the company. I mean, the company went on to be quite successful. It was expensive in the short term, because he was part owner of a company, but sure, that happens. So I would say, if you're going to be going into a business that you intend to be long-term, put as much due diligence into who your partner is as you would to a proposal. This is a business proposal. And so the person you're working with, you're going to be spending a lot of time with, and you need to make sure that you are well aligned. And I should say, not just a business, I mean like a marriage proposal. Would you marry this person? Would you have a business relationship with this person? I sort of view it the same way. I mean, I happen to be in a business relationship with my husband, so it literally is the same thing.
Me too. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Can I also ask you about another point that's coming up here a lot, is going massively outside of my comfort zone, stepping outside of my comfort zone, fear of failure, failure itself, taking on more than I can handle. What's your take on that?
There's a lot of things there. I just address failure. So I failed publicly in a big way. It had never happened before. So in the game industry, it's not just games, but there's Kickstarter. I had a Kickstarter. It was public. It was all over the place, and it failed. Not just a little fail. It failed, right? And I remember as it was failing, thinking like, oh my goodness, somebody's going to come for my game developer card. Not that we have a card, but just pretend that we do. And I really thought like, well, this is it. My whole career's over. Instead, all I learned was that failure is truly part of the journey. Did it feel good going through it? No. But the best bit is that it took away the fear from me. So if I fail again, failure is just part of success. I mean, Steve Jobs failed very publicly a couple times, and he went on obviously to huge success. I mean, pretty much every entrepreneur, I mean, the inherent with starting your own business is saying, I hope this idea will work. If it was proven already, somebody would have done it. Right. So we're trying to pursue something that hasn't been done. And part of that might mean it fails. Right. But I don't worry about that anymore. I've had, it's like, maybe I'll have one failure this year, but I'll have one. It's part of success. I don't know anybody who's had a lot of success who can't also go, oh my goodness, do you want to see what's in my closet? Look at this nightmare. There's nobody.
But I wonder then, how do we treat the conversation around failure? Because I was surprised when I went to Disney the first time that Walt Disney went bankrupt twice. Snow White saved him, basically. But we don't hear about that. We hear
No.
about the great successes. Like, do we spend enough time talking about what failure is, or talking about what failure could be, to strip that layer of fear? Or do you just have to go through it, Brenda?
I think it is something that you have to go through, because different people have different things that they fear. For some people, it may be public humiliation. What if everybody knows? For other people, it could be fear of financial failure, right? So
That's coming up here as well.
yeah, so it's really dependent on what the failure is. But I can tell you, having been through multiple levels of failure, that I view that as a literal stepping stone. Like, how else are you going to know that something doesn't work without it failing, right? Like if you were, and I think when we have it in business, we really blow it up a lot. But if we just let's just like make it much smaller. We're going to try a new recipe, and we're not sure that it's going to work. And we take it into the oven. Like a perfect example was when my daughter decided maple syrup would be a good addition to spaghetti sauce. Anybody listening knows that's going to be a horrible idea, but she had to find out. Disgusting idea.
Sounds sweet.
Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. Nobody needs to try this. But she was curious. Like, I don't even know where she came up with this idea. She tried it and it failed. Right. So there was no, that said, I'm making fun of it here. Okay. Pretend I didn't do that.
We won't tell her you're
We won't tell her. Right. But it's just, we have to try things. I mean, it goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship, and I just don't have a fear of failure anymore. I just do not. Because some of the biggest successes I've had have come as a direct result of trying something and it didn't work. Like, I mean, in every profession, that's the case. If we have to go to a doctor, the doctor might try this medication or that medication. We'll try this first, and if that doesn't work, we'll try that. Well, that's failure, but that failure is necessary to iterate toward the right thing. It's true in almost everything. You try something, if it doesn't work, you try again.
I believe paracetamol and chocolate chip cookies were both failures, because I think the chocolate that was gone into the cookie was supposed to melt to make it a chocolate cookie, and then it wasn't. And actually then she said, oh, actually this could be better. And I think paracetamol was the same. So sometimes failure is actually, as you said, and to actually directly quote you, a literal stepping stone towards success.
Yeah, it's necessary.
You're clearly extremely passionate about what you do, Brenda. That's clear. I mean, I mean, you're sitting here in front of me, but I'm sure it's jumping down the screen there to everybody else. How do you weave passion into your career, but not let one overtake the other?
Oh my goodness. I think they're all tied together. Like I'm lucky that I knew what I wanted to do from an early age. I'm lucky that I just still so fortunate. I mean, especially getting into video games in the 80s, saying, what do you want to do? I want to be a game designer, like that's equivalent to saying to my mother, I want to be a rock star, I suppose. Somehow she was like, sounds great, and let's pursue that, and just believed in that. So that belief ended up transferring into me. And I just believe that I can do whatever I want to do, whatever I said. Mind you, I believe that I can do whatever I want to do. It may take me several tries to do it. I may not be able to do it on the first go. I may fail along the way, but I'll get there.
But where did you get that sense of self-belief? Because I can imagine there's a lot of the audience today thinking, I'd love to borrow that sense of self-confidence for a while. Is it a coat that you wear? Is it internal, external?
It's an interesting thing. Wow, what a weird, when I answer this, you'll see how it all ties back in. I had a serious, we'll call it a failure. When I was 13, there were some girls in the neighborhood. This quick story is they stole some alcohol from their parents and they blamed it on me. So I got the blame, and the parents said, oh, you can't hang around with her anymore. To say that my self-confidence was shot is an understatement. So all I was left with is getting confidence in myself, in saying, I'm going to do this. You can say I'll be nobody, but I'll be somebody. I'm going to do something. And I remember saying those things consciously out, like, I will do that. You think I can't do it, I will. So when the guidance counselor said, you'll never get into Clarkson College, which was it was a college that I was punching above my weight trying to get into that school, but I applied to that school, only to that school, and I applied early admission. I was going to do it. And so I just somehow developed this, like, if you say I can't, I will. And I had no doubt, I still have no doubt that it may take me twice as long. Like, there are kids that are entering the Trinity PhD this year in English, and they went straight from their master's course in their 20s into their PhD. Well, I'm in my 50s, but I'm entering Trinity this year. It took me 30 years, but I'm going to do it. And so I just, I don't care how long it takes me. I'll run the same race. I may have to walk it, but I'll get there. So I don't have, like, I guess I would feel if my confidence were misplaced if I thought I could compete with, say, somebody who was, it may take me twice as long, but I'll do it. If I want something, I'll get it. And so I think, that also extends to business. Like, maybe, like, if we have person A and person B, person A might be able to get business success with an idea in 2 years. And person B it might take them 3 years, but they'll get there. And so I just know I'll make it. I have, this is such an arrogant statement, and I know it is, but I have this little, just repeat it to myself. You know what? It's not arrogant. It helps drive me to do what I want to do. It's just, I get what I want. And
like a mantra.
Yeah, I get what I want. And it may take me 5 years to get it, or it may take me 30 years in the case of a PhD, but I'll get it. I will.
And do you have clarity around what you want? Is that I could imagine practicing that mantra, but if I wasn't clear about what I wanted, it would be hard to get there.
Not always.
Right.
And sometimes I have things that I want that are conflicting.
Yeah,
like this year I want success in my company. This year I want success in a PhD. This year I want success in, I'd love to write a novel. This year I want success in my twins who are in their leaving cert.
This year you don't want to sleep.
Whew. So for me, it's a question of which one of these things is the most important. And the most important thing is my twins' success in the leaving cert. I look at this entire pile of things and I go, I can't do all of this year. So I'm currently examining what gives. And you're right. It's like, is it sleep that gives? Well, no, you can't. So somehow I have to figure out how all of these things fit together. And I also, I avail of, we'll say, mentors as well. Like, here's the problem space that I have. Is there another way to do this? How would you suggest doing that? I don't assume I have all the answers, because I often don't.
And I'm looking here at the chat, and there's people are saying here, I love this affirmation of self. Anne Ravanona says, self-confidence is a muscle, need to build it up every day.
Oh, that's a great line.
Sandra says, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Michelle says, love her take on life. Claire says she has a great attitude. Michelle says, mantras are great. Sandra says, I get what I want. Let's remember this mantra. Anne says, sometimes we don't get what we want, rather get what we need. A different type of learning. Michelle says, like song. Now the whole lot of them are singing.
Yeah, that's all great. That's all true.
And it is. But what I also get from you, and I'm wondering whether I'm accurate in my observation, so please tell me if I'm wrong. I get a sense that you have a sense of realism about getting what you want when it's the right time or when the priority takes its place.
Yeah.
Is there a realism or a discipline around getting what you want as well as action, as well as attitude? as well as self-confidence?
Well, there has to be a discipline around it, right? Like you
Mm.
have to show up, especially when it's not fun to show up. You have to do the work when it's not fun to do the work. You know, you have to do the work when you're afraid. You have to do the work. You just have to do the work. I think for me, one of the I can't call it lucky, but I think one of the benefits that I had is I grew up in a low income family, a really low income family. So you know, that line, you get what you need. And that's really true. And sometimes what I want is the wrong thing. And I just also have to trust that the universe is going to direct me away from that, or that I will recognize, wow, this is not a great thing.
Do you have faith that that happens?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I heard this great piece of advice I got a bunch of years ago, which somebody, you know, if you don't know what to do, it's because you don't have all the information you need, you know. And so, and I trust that I have surrounded myself with people, like I know that I make mistakes maybe on an hourly basis, you know, and I surround myself with a group of people who will say that that way that you tend to go, or the way that you're thinking about going, that's not a great path for you. I have a tendency to cut back on exercise or time for myself when my schedule gets really busy, which of course has much longer term consequences, right? So I make sure, like I have an exercise buddy, so we check in with each other. How many steps did you walk today? And so I try to set myself up so that I don't fall, I don't believe my own line of whatever, you know, like just checking with other people. And I have that, you know, I have critics for my games, you know, so here's this game idea. They are 100% comfortable in telling me, you know, where I've gone wrong. I have a couple friends that I talk with every week, you know, in addition to my husband, who's obviously my closest friend. And just about, you know, here's like, especially the challenge that I've outlined that I'm facing this year.
It sounds like you make really concerted efforts to make sure you're not in an echo chamber.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, there's nothing like releasing something publicly and failing. That biggest failure that I had, if I had not been in an echo chamber, I wouldn't have had that. But then I also think that having that big public failure removed any fear that I had. It just removed it. I'm not afraid of failing. You know, I tried and I failed, and nobody, you know, I don't go to dinner and somebody goes, "Aren't you that person who failed?"
Yeah.
That's you. Nobody remembers that. Nobody, you know, I will. I'll actually, like everybody, when I speak, they ask me for a bio. I think I'm going to write a failure bio. I think that would be like you said, how come we don't hear about that? How come we hear about Disney's great achievements, but what if I had, like, you know, Brenda Romero failed a Kickstarter in 2012 and then Spectacular failed in the following way. It's like, what if we introduce people like that, and we were able to identify with them, because that failure is just 100%. It's instrumental. Like if that Kickstarter had succeeded, I would have been working on that game. That company would have stayed going. I wouldn't have been able to come to Ireland as a Fulbright scholar. If I hadn't come to Ireland and traveled around for 2.5 months, I wouldn't have fallen in love with the country. If I hadn't have fallen in love with the country, I wouldn't have moved here. I wouldn't have had the last 5 years here. I wouldn't be in Galway, which I really think is the best place in the world. Like, thank goodness for that failure. You know, me and my kids and my husband have a great life here, and we're incredibly grateful for it, all because of that failure, all because of it. I wouldn't have been able to do any of the things that I did. So, you know, that greeting card-ish line that, you know, every failure's got an opportunity for you is really true.
Well, for anybody who'd like to follow Brenda Romero, she has the shortest Twitter handle that I've ever seen. It's @BR. Now, if you can't remember that, we're in trouble. But actually, and someone else here has actually written your bio for you, your Twitter bio for you. And Barbara Meehan describes you as confidence with humility, a great role model.
Oh, geez. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, it's funny how you say, you know, you've fallen in love with Ireland. I'd say Ireland has done a great job of falling in love with you too. Brenda Romero, it's been my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much, not just for your insights, but for your authentic honesty. From your daughter's, you know, combination of Italy with Canada, or your secret safe with us, right up to your, you know, quite a different approach, not just to failure, but I think to life. And you're right, I've never heard of anybody in their biography being described as what they've done as a balanced journey. It's basically the milestones that they've reached. So thank you very much for both your practical insights. And again, people are coming back here. Claire McMullen says, never stop asking those questions. Anne says, love the idea of the failure bio. Anne also says, thank goodness for that failure. And Evelyn says, we're delighted to have you in Galway. Agree with all that you say. So thank you so much indeed for being here with us today.
Girls me maggot.
Impressive, the couple of focal as well. So now we're going to go live to Mairead. Mairead Mackle, can I just check? Are you here with us? Super, super indeed. So good morning. Good afternoon at this stage. Or are we? We're approaching it. How are you today, Mairead? And can you hear me loud and clear?
I can indeed, Susan. How are you? Lovely to join you.
Can I just check there? Can we just make sure that we can hear Mairead okay?
You hear me okay?
Yeah, we might just need to unmute you there, Mairead. If you want to try there again, Mairead, hopefully we'll be able to hear you shortly.
All right, Susan, can you hear me?
There we go. Perfect. Your dulcet tones is ringing out now across here the west of Ireland. Thank you. So first and foremost, can we ask you, Mairead Mackle, to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yes, I can indeed, Susan, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this amazing conference. A little bit about me. I'm the CEO of Tarsus Enterprises. I grew up on a farm in Fermanagh and now live in a lovely little historic village outside Armagh. So that's amazing. I studied podiatry at university, so a million miles from what I'm doing today. So after university, I suppose I got married, I had my first son, and then I tried to get a job as a podiatrist, but failed all the interviews. So ended up the only option left open to me was that I had to start a business. So I started a business as a podiatrist, and then that experience, I suppose, showed me that it was a very restrictive thing. I was stuck in a clinic from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and that wasn't good at all. I realized that that was something I didn't want to do with my life. So I really wanted to be able to afford to employ just one person. So I started to look around for other businesses.
And why did you set up that business effectively, Mairead? I mean, was it because of the love of the area or the subject that you were doing? Was it to have more flexibility around your time? What were you looking for?
It was really like, I suppose the business was really to, like, because I'd had that, I suppose, experience in podiatry, I said, right, I need to be able to afford to employ one person. So I was looking for a business to just do that. And then I came across home care as a business, and it sat really well with my values because it was about helping people to live independently. So I was pregnant with my second child at that stage, and I thought, right, I can work from home. I set up the business from my kitchen table, and we just, you know, it just grew really quickly. And I suppose I was bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I got really involved in it, and then we grew and grew and grew. And then I joined forces then with my husband a few years later, and we set up home care housing. And I suppose we just kept working at it because that's what you did. And then what happened was really we started to invest in other projects, things that have interested to us. And then a turning point then came really when we joined Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and we went on a trip to India with the CEOs in 2010 or 11. And I was exposed then to the whole subject of corporate social responsibility. So that really excited me. And I thought, well, I can do so much more with this business. So we come back from that trip and we set up Eye Care Charity, which is our in-house charity. And we've worked really hard on that. It's 100% fundraising. We set up a foundation, and it's all really about acts of kindness. And what we do is we fundraise across all of our regions across Ireland, and then provide maybe a piece of equipment to a child, maybe that the parents can't afford their equipment or whatever. So I suppose our business is now all about using business for good, and it's conscious capitalism, I suppose, in operation. And then for me personally as well, the other thing that I love is historic and listed buildings. So I've fixed up a few of them over the years, and our head office is a listed building. So we invest a lot in that sort of thing. And what happened during the lockdown really was because we're providing frontline service, because you can imagine people really needed the service. It was chaotic at the start, but then we got time to think about what we were really about. So during lockdown, we set up Tarsus Enterprises, which is the parent company of all of the different business interests that we have, because we realized that everything we'd invested in over the last 25 years had this common thread of social impact. So we call it Tarsus Enterprises, which is quite a romantic story, because Tarsus was called after a saint, and Saint Tarsus had a feast day on the 25th of February, which was the day my husband and I met X amount of years ago, will not say, but a lot of years ago. So I suppose Tarsus Enterprises is now really about creating innovative solutions for the future of living. So we've pulled all of our interests together, and we are investing a lot in, you know, the future of living, solutions for housing, solutions for care, and all that sort of stuff. So that's a quick intro to me.
Mairead, you mentioned there, for example, you said we just grew and grew and grew. How do you just grow and grow and grow? How do you do that?
Well, yeah, you grow and grow and grow, I suppose, because I suppose like the first thing you do is like you see opportunity in everything. And it is a difficult question, yes, but I think it's all about your mindset. And a couple of years before we got married, we went to France and we'd hired a car. And on the back of that car, there was a little slogan called "Oui, je peux." Now, my French is not very good, but that meant, yes, I can. And we thought, well, that's a really good thing, a really good attitude in life. So what we did is we took that sort of attitude into business, and we said, you know, yes, I can. So our mantra really in business is, you know, the answer is yes. Now, what is the question? So we like accepted opportunities, I suppose, that came our way. And then like, okay, we had a lot of failures along the way, because a lot of times we tried things and it didn't work. But what I said is just, you learn from that, you fail fast, and you move on, because that's what it's all about. But what that does is, as a leader within an organization, I think it creates a culture of innovations, because our leaders then say, well, I mean, you know, they're comfortable with failure. So, you know, like, you know, we can try things. And then what we like, we have a really open, like flat structure where we just, people bring us ideas and we explore all of those ideas. And the other thing, I suppose, in terms of growing, it's really important to have a trusted brand. And we did have a trusted brand. And I think the reason we have a trusted brand is because we put our people at the core of everything we do. You know, we put like that service and making people's lives better at the core of everything we do. And the other thing we did, because of I Care Charity and everything, is we have a core purpose. And that core purpose is really the glue that keeps us all together as a team. And I think that I mean, at one stage, I remember way back about 10 years ago, we were approached to somebody to buy our shares, and we wanted to, I suppose, take money off the table and build a renewable energy plant at that stage, so it suited us. But we sold our shares, and then we're in business with another organization, 50-50. But what we realized then is overnight those shares were out of our control, and they went then eventually ended up in the hands of a German VC, which wasn't good, because our values weren't aligned with their values, because they were just interested in the bottom line, which is fine, that's what they're about. But we realized we'd made a mistake, and then it took us maybe several years then to get those shares bought back, which we did a couple of years ago, thankfully, after a lot of discussions with the Germans. I had a file on my computer saying, how do I get rid of the Germans? But what happened was we got them bought back. And I think that it's really important as an organization to keep control of your destiny, because, you know, that's sort of where you're going as a business. And that's, you're very privileged, because you have these people, these leaders in your organization, and these people who really invest their lives and invest their energy in what you have built. And I think it's really important to, you know, retain control of your own culture. And, you know, it's really about, it's about input, it's about your impact that you make in the world. So that's what we're all about as an organization. And what I was saying then at the start, my goal, I suppose, was to employ one person, and then through work and all the rest of it, we went on now to employ 1,200 people. We provide 3,500 beds every night for people who are at risk of homelessness or who suffer from mental health and addiction, and provide about 6,000 calls then every day across the community for people who can then use that to live, you know, remain independent within their own home.
So can I just make sure that I have this right? So 25 years in business, 3,500 care beds a night, 1,200 staff. And that's what grow and grow and grow means, Mairead, does it?
Yeah, that's what grow and grow.
I doubt you're finished, are you?
Well, we'll have to keep going, I suppose.
What a really great Northern Irish way of agreeing with me.
We'll have to keep moving.
Yeah.
They say if you're not growing, you're dying.
And when you talk about, like, I'm hearing an awful lot about like purpose, what matters to you, impact, etc. How do you find, I mean, I'm going back to the question that we asked earlier on to people around what they were worried about taking. And a lot of it is that team element. how do you make sure that people's values are aligned with yours? How do you test that, Mairead? Is it an interview? Is it, if you want to know with me, come live with me, and you'll only know after a while of working in the business or the charity or the foundation or any of the other parts of your organisation?
Well, I think, you know, we mentioned it before, is really about finding the right people. And, you know, within, I suppose, loyalty is a really important thing, and inspiring loyalty within your people and getting the right people to come and work with you. And to do that, to inspire that loyalty, I have found that, because I suppose our industry is very difficult. It's a really challenging industry, and it's not just about, you know, making money. It's really a vocation for a lot of people. And to inspire loyalty, I suppose, well, even during the pandemic, you know, so we've been in business for 26 years now, but our staff just blew us away. We'd heard so many people about, you know, everything had fallen apart, blah, blah, blah. But overnight, like, our team, I suppose, were out there on the front line. They were, you know, they needed to be there. People were depending on them. And it was really difficult. It was really challenging, but they really stepped up to the mark. And we realized that what we had built, which was this purpose and culture about making a difference, that it's more than just a job. It's about making a difference in people's lives. And then, because we seen that in action, you know, during the pandemic, because I'd heard care assistants even talking about, you know, they get out of bed, hail, rain or snow, to go to their clients because they know that they need them. And that sense of loyalty is something that the whole business runs on, because if we lost that sense of loyalty, the whole thing would fall apart. But we've built it up, I think, through culture and through, it's not just about the bottom line, it's about making a difference in people's lives. It's about the community. It's just about using your business for good. I said earlier, like conscious capitalism and operation, really making a difference and using that platform for a difference.
And Mairead, I'm going to ask your permission if I could ask a personal question. And the reason I'm going to ask you this is because, again, I'm going back to your own Twitter biography. You mentioned the fact that you're a mother of 7 children. You know, a feat in its own right, apart from all of the other amazing milestones. That is very much coming up here on the chat. But, you know, having a very busy business life, which you clearly do, and a business life that must take up part of your heart as well, by virtue of how much you place value and impact. How do you do it with having a family? And by the way, just in case anyone is wondering this, I would ask a man the very same question, because I know some people might be wondering, am I only asking you that because you're a woman? I'm not. I'm asking you that because you're a parent.
Yeah, I mean, people do ask you that, and I think it's really important, you know, and nowadays I suppose it's both parents that are, you know, very involved in their family. And I mean, I have 7 children, as you know. I have 4 daughters and 3 sons, and like, I made that decision and to have to be a parent of 7. And I suppose it's, as I say, it's not a lifestyle choice for the faint-hearted, but it's my decision. But the important thing is, to make that decision, you have to have a business that works for you. Otherwise, you know, you can't be working 24 hours a day and then like let the children fend for themselves. You have to be there for the children. And I think as well, one of the things that I learned is, as the children get older, they actually need you around more, because there's emotional support. So my personal goal, I suppose, is through the business is to spend about 10 hours a week within the business, but really productive hours. And then make sure that if it's not working within that time, then there's something wrong with the processes. So something needs to be fixed. But I can't say it's always been easy. I mean, that's the ideal dream, to like work 10 hours a week and have this business running. But a few years ago, I think we're very much values-based leadership. And a few years ago, we got involved with Lift Ireland. And I'm sure you've heard of John Maxwell and the 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership. And within that book, the 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership, he talks about the inner circle. So I really believe that. So we have a fabulous trusted team at home, a fabulous trusted team in the office, because you have to treat your home like the most important department within the business. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. I say it hasn't always been easy, because my twins are 6. And I remember I was afraid to tell anybody I was expecting twins, because we'd had a big gap between the other ones. And but anyway, I'd got to about 18, 20 weeks, and I thought, right, I better tell somebody these twins are coming. So I hired a new general manager, and I thought, well, I'm fine now. I've got 3 or 4 months now, and then I can, you know, get him sort of inducted into the business, and everything will be fine. And then about a week later, my most trusted associate, my CFO, Caroline, she come in and said she was expecting twins as well. And we were about 10 days apart. But anyway, my twins then decided to make an arrival at 30 weeks. So they decided to arrive early and mess up all my plans. And the little darlings, I couldn't go into the company obviously because I was in neonatal, and they needed to be with them, and the poor general manager just had to manage by phone. Then Caroline gave birth to her twins and say 10 days later. So the two of us were sitting up with our twins, but like, so it hasn't been easy. Like you just have to, suppose resilience is a big part of it, because when we did get them home after 4 weeks, they didn't sleep at all. It took about 4 years to got them into that they're actually sleeping. So it was a bit of a nightmare, but I suppose like they're 6 now. They're 6 now, so we can sort of, they're little darlings. We look back now and say, well, we got through that, but certainly wouldn't like to go through it again. But you just have to, I think resilience is a muscle that you build up over time. You get these challenges that you're faced with, and you just have to try and like look for a solution. And I think I would be very solutions driven. I'd be thinking all the time, well, what is the solution for this? How will we get through it? And having that sort of, you know, that really good team around you, then they just pull in and help you, you know, when you really need it.
And on that note, Mairead, if you're very solutions focused, I find people who are focusing on the solution often have a lot of clarity around the problem. I was fortunate earlier on this year that I interviewed your Attorney General in the North. She's now Dame Brenda King, and she said that one of the key things that we often make a mistake of doing is trying to jump too quickly into the solution before really getting a sense of what the problem is all about. How do you do that? I mean, I'm just trying to think about how you do that in the context of how many things are going on, about the fact that you trust an awful lot of people. So do you let them figure out the problem and help them with the solution? And I'm also conscious that you said you really believe in values-based leadership. So could you just give us a sense about what are the steps to get to becoming solutions focused in the way you do?
Well, I think that, I mean, at the very early days, it was very difficult because what I found was, I said I studied podiatry at college, so I was a podiatrist, and I didn't know how to run a business, but I didn't realize that till later on. It was actually, my husband had bought me a book when he was in America called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and I had read that book, and the whole thing resonated with me quite a lot, because what had happened was I'd been trapped in this podiatry practice, and then I had started home care, and then it was so big and such a, like, the sheer volume of the transactions that needed to happen, and the people that needed to be looked after, and making sure that everybody actually had to be cared for, like, set a whole new set of challenges for me, because, like, you can imagine with young kids, late nights, sometimes we had to work all nights. But the thing about it is, within that book, what they said is that sorry about that. One of the things they said was that if a business isn't giving you more life, it's taking your life away. And then I realized at that stage that that's what my business was doing. It was like sucking the life out of me. It was like taking my life away. I had no life. And to be successful, it's great. Yes, you can be financially successful and you can run a great business, but if you don't have any time, then it's pointless. So, like, you have to be solutions driven, and I suppose the way to be solutions driven then is to build the team that align to your values, and trust that team. Let that team then take charge. But to get that team, like, it's not easy. People think, well, get the team. It's not easy. I mean, I say, like, you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. So, I mean, I have like a 16-person leadership team, and it's taken me years to get them. And they have to share my values, share my vision, and then they know that we're looking for solutions. So what we do is, say, for instance, we're in housing and we're in care. So, you know, everybody knows there's a housing crisis. So what we would do, right? Well, what we did was we decided to look at a housing solution. So we created a product called Fabrico, which is a portable housing solution. So we built our own housing as such, which can actually be moved from place to place. Now, that wasn't traditionally what we had done, but we just thought, well, that's a good idea. We see a problem, let's create the solution, and just went ahead and done it. But you have to have the team behind you to do that.
Are you also someone, though, Mairead, that doesn't see some of the barriers maybe that's traditionally seen? You know, when you say just go ahead and done it, you know, we just grew and grew and grew. You know, if you're not growing, well, then you're dying. I get a sense that growth is inbuilt in you, almost like an internal sat nav, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that if you're not growing, you're dying is so true. You cannot stand still, you know, in an organization, and that's true for like every part of your life, you know, be that in your values, your family, whatever. You know, you have to be constantly, you're like a sum of moving parts. So I think it's really important to like create that culture of innovation within an organization, because if you're still doing the same thing 3 years later that you're, you know, doing now, the company's not going to survive. So it's really important that, you know, you're constantly moving and constantly looking for new ideas. And you can't do all that yourself. Yes, it is the leader's job to share the vision, but you need those people to actually say, well, let's try this. And if it doesn't work, like, okay, let's move on, try something else. And then even within our housing solution, you know, we've tried things, we're trying different, you know, different windows, different doors, different cladding, all that sort of stuff. So you're constantly, it's a culture of innovation that we have created within terraces, that you're constantly looking at new ways of doing things. So I think it is a mindset. Yeah, it's just the way you're built. And maybe it's naivety in some ways because you don't actually see the problems. But if you don't try, then you fail by default. So, you know, you have to keep trying.
That's an interesting way of putting it. If you don't try, you fail by default. I'm just going to read out some of the comments that's here, and I just, you know, maybe there's some of them that you'd like to come back to. Peter asks, did Mairead use any external funding on her journey pre the VC investment? Sylvia said, it's fabulous to see all these strong women having a good work-life balance. It's encouraging to see loyalty and values triumph. Sandra says, yes, and inspiring her team to give her the freedom to have time at home. Peter says, not a lifestyle choice for the faint-hearted. Yeah, 1,200 staff and 7 kids. Yeah, you have it in one there, Mairead. Have a trusted inner circle. Trust your home as the most important department of your in your business. So inspiring, Mairead, says Anne. Michelle says, Then Anne also said the book that Mairead mentioned is The Myth Revisited. Michelle said, wow, loved that. Managing time and using your business to create the life you want is so important to me. Sandra says, love Mairead's message, so real. I think most female business owners can relate to her. Paula says, I love helping people achieve this. Donica Hughes says, E-Myth Revisited is a great book. Thanks for the reminder. Claire says, Mairead, how do you keep in contact with your team? You have such a good business and you've literally moved mountains as you move forward. Carly says, wow, seriously inspirational.
Well, I suppose the only thing I would say is that the way I manage is very personal. Like there's no hierarchy, and I think the way you bring people on the journey with you is really to be part of their lives, celebrate their lives, you know, be there for them, talk and listen to them, like have an open door policy, and just, you know, be part of the journey as well. So I haven't it all figured out by any means, but I suppose these are some of the things just that has worked for me. And I mean, I'm just really proud of the team that I have around me, and I love them because they're so passionate about what they do. And I'm so inspired by them every day, and what, you know, the getting up and going out to the people that really need them.
And Mairead, what is next for you? You, the business, the team around you, the family, like what does growth look like now? Because I'm sure if I was to talk to you again in 6 months, never mind 6 years, I'd be intrigued to hear how those numbers and those impact would change. But I would say the values-based leadership would still be the bedrock of your organisation. But what's next for you?
Well, I'd said to you earlier that one of my passions is listed buildings. So, and then we have built the renewable energy. So we're creating our own energy now within it's like a family project. We live on a farm. We've created our own energy. So I suppose part of our vision 2025 is create, innovate, regenerate. So it's really we have different projects that we want to, we have a house that was the first house in Ireland to be run by hydroelectricity way back 150 years ago. So we plan to, I suppose, regenerate that and have it now powered completely by renewable energy. So that's part of our vision. We want to really push ahead with housing solutions, because I do really believe that people all want their own front door, and like there's no reason why we can't offer that to people if we really look at innovative solutions instead of looking at the traditional ways. So that's definitely one of our visions. I don't know if we're going to get anywhere, but we'll push on anyway. And like really just, you know, keep building our team and keep doing what we do and keep in charge of our own destiny and keep our culture alive.
I'm interested in how often you use the word vision. You repeat that often in what you talk about. That's important to you, is it?
Well, whilst I say my goal is to work 10 hours a week focused on my different businesses, I do believe it's a leader's job to share the vision. So that's my role. I have to share the vision. we're never going to get there if we don't share where we're trying to go. So that's why I use that quite a lot.
I like the 10 hours a week. I know, as you say, it's the ideal. I understand that, but there's lots of people here today, Mairead, who possibly question sometimes whether freedom and flexibility on not just your personal life, on parts of your non-business, non-career life. Let's say that's really important, and then you also have a growth goal, vision. That's very important to them. Can the two happily coexist sustainably for a long period of time? I think you're going to say they can, but I'm not sure. And I just, maybe could you just speak to that point for people who are listening and wondering if they can do it too?
Well, I suppose for me, it's probably slightly different because I have 7 children. So I have to focus on my children. So I have to make sure that I only work X amount of hours a week. And make sure that, you know, the hours that are worked are really focused. Otherwise, they'd be neglected. If I wasn't in that position, I'd probably be working 24 hours a day, because like when I did start home care, I was like completely, you know, bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. You know, that saying where the definition of an entrepreneur, where you spend a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can spend the rest of your life like most people can. I mean, I was the epitome of that. I was like work all the time. But I think you have to, if you start a business, you have to put those early years in. You can't, you know, your ultimate goal is really to reduce your hours. And if you haven't reduced your hours and set your processes in place, then you haven't achieved anything, because you can't spend all of your life. And it's the same with the leaders within our company. It's not just me. Like I would say to them, you know, you can't be working 24 hours a day in this department. You have to put the processes and the digital systems in place to give yourself, you know, everything at the touch of a button. It's just something where your processes are not working if everybody's working 24 hours a day. Simple as. Yes, but I know what you're saying. But a lot of the time that I would spend, I work on my, you know, the charity, and I don't really count that as work. And the family are like the renewable energy plant. The family are all involved in that. So there's a lot of projects that we do as a family that you don't really count as working hours. It's just sort of passion projects. So it's not that I'm sitting about doing 10 hours a week. And
Mairead, I don't think anyone could accuse you of sitting about any hours a week. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up this conversation by reading out a message that Fran has sent in. You are an amazing lady, Mairead, inspiration to listen to. You can feel how important your team are to you and your values. Thank you for your honesty and your vision. It, again, has been my absolute pleasure to spend time with you here today and to share that honesty and that vision with all of the people who've joined us. Mairead Mackall, for all that has happened and all that is to come, we wish you every success.
Thank you, Susan. Lovely to join you. Have a good day.
Thank you indeed. Haven't I the best job ever? Honestly, spending time in the company of people like Brenda Romero and Mairead Mackall, and I can tell you as well, all of the team in the back room here as well, I'm having a great morning, and I really, really hope that you are too. Based on what I'm seeing here in the chat, based on what I'm seeing on Twitter, I can see that that you're picking up a lot from this. And, you know, just like Anne asked you, in that, in the last question that she asked you in her own session, what first steps are you going to take today? I really hope that you can, just as we're going along, just reflect on that. What actions can you put in place arising from what you're learning from our speakers today? Now, we're going to move on to a whole other area that you generally don't hear discussed very often, which is how can blockchain be applied to business? And to introduce us to this topic, I'm now going to invite Professor Joyce O'Connor. Good morning.
Morning.
And we're delighted to have you. I have to tell you a very quick story about this woman. She was the first here this morning to run her tech check. I have to say, the early bird, indeed, Professor Joyce O'Connor gets the worm. So could you first of all tell us a little bit about you, and then also tell us about what blockchain is, particularly in the context of how it works for business?
Yes, thanks very much, Susan. And can I just say, I've enjoyed this morning so much. All the people that have contributed, you know, Anne, Carla, Colette, Mary, Brenda, and Mairead. And they've set such a platform of excitement about setting up your own business, but more importantly, have shared all the things that I think are really important. And I believe, like Mairead, that everything in my life has been around vision and mission. And I think that's really important. And also surrounding yourself with really positive people. You do not need negative people in your life. So people keep telling you can't do this or you shouldn't do that, just forget them. So I think this morning has been inspiration and really, really helpful. My background has been in education. I was in UCD as a senior research fellow, and my research, believe it or not, was on drinking behaviour. You might say that's very interesting, but I was the first person to do study on drinking in Ireland as distinct from alcoholism. And I worked with the British Medical Council doing a study on young people and their parents in Ireland, England, and the Irish who went to Ireland and their children were brought up in England. And from there I went to UL. My husband became headmaster in the community school St. Enda's in Limerick, and I joined UL at a very early stage. It was fantastic. It really was like a startup. I had only 12 students in my class. It was just fantastic. I'm working with Dr. Ed Walsh, who was a great entrepreneur, and I set up a research centre there that really was like a small business because it was self-funding. And the areas that I looked at were women entrepreneurs. At that stage would have been in the the mid-70s, 80s, but also caring, the elderly, social policy issues. And I stayed there over 17 years, and I had an Eisenhower Fellowship, and I went to America for 3 months with my husband. And that opened up a whole new area. And I've always had a passion about access to education at a time, place, and pace that suits the learner. So I got an opportunity to, I became the president of as it was, the National College of Industrial Relations, but we changed it again with a team and a vision and a belief to the National College of Ireland. And we started with about 400 students with 1 degree and moved down to the Docklands, to the National College of Ireland there. And again, what was really important in doing that, I had one instruction from my board was that we couldn't borrow any money. Now you might argue about that, how can you do it? But we managed to build that new campus down and also get land from the Dublin Docklands Authority then, because of our mission, because our mission was to increase access to education, to help people in the inner city and other areas, but also help business, others, people who had left school early. And at that stage, we'd over 40 off-campus centres, which made it easy for people to start back into education, and then they could go to the other colleges around the country and in doing that. So that was really a passion. It was all about that mission, that belief. And I'd like to say what Mairead has said and what Anne was saying, your team, nobody does anything on their own. It is a team effort. Very important, that selection of your team. And it's that vision, belief and loyalty that enables things to happen. If you work in education, your focus is on students. It's all about students. It's all about really creating an environment where people can reach their potential. Nobody empowers anybody. We empower ourselves. And creating that environment is really important. While I was there, I was involved with big companies. I was on the board of CRH, the ICS Building Society, but I worked also with the voluntary sector as chair of the Paul Partnership in Limerick and the Dublin Inner City Partnership, and a whole array of voluntary companies, state and semi-state bodies. And I think that these bodies are so important. The community sector, the voluntary sector, the not-for-profit sector, small companies, all of these create an excitement about doing things. And when, like the ladies, I've seen the chat that has come in today, I can see the excitement that they have, the success that they've had, but that are going to have in the future. And I believe that, part of that is creating that ambience of excitement about all things that are possible. And how do you do that? You do it, first of all, in your own belief, but having people around you who are positive, who are, constructively positive and will help you, move on that path. So so I've been involved, I've left the college. One of the great things that I did with funders, again, was set up the Early Learning Centre. And I think that's really, really a great legacy there for the inner city and the area, so that people can access education literally from, the time they're born all the way through, and it helps access, because second chance education is really important, but the key issues to ensure that people can have access. And of course, education now, as you know, as I said, if anybody have had students who are with the CAO today, the points are out. Remember, once you're 23, you need no points. There's so many pathways into education. So step a tape back. The fact that you didn't get your course doesn't mean you won't get on it. Maybe wait a year, 2 years, or whatever. So there's always a way. There's always a way. And people will help you do that. So one of the things I was involved in over the years was I was chair of the Digital Hub Development Agency, and became very interested in technology. And I chaired the Institute of International Affairs, International and European Affairs Digital Group, and I've been doing that for over, 12, 14 years. And in that, of course, we met world leaders in technology, what they were doing, and became aware of emerging technologies, around 2015 onwards, and blockchain, AI, IoT, quantum computing, all were there, and things were happening. And one morning in June 2018, a group of women came together and said, look, these emerging technologies, particularly blockchain and AI, are going to make a major impact. We believe blockchain is going to impact not only business, but the lives we live, education, and the community. And we said, look, the real thing is to create awareness about blockchain, to increase diversity and inclusion, to make sure that people understand generally what these emerging technologies are about, particularly blockchain, but also give them the opportunity to look at it in terms of their career, in terms of their business, and to see, will it make an impact? And obviously, in relation to that, we got involved in encouraging courses and access to blockchain courses and training so that people could train appropriately. You don't necessarily need a degree, depending on your business. If you're a developer, obviously you do, but if you're applying blockchain in your business, you might do a short course, 6 weeks, 3 weeks, micro-credential to help you understand it better in relation to your business. So we were keen to develop that, but also we're very keen also to work with policymakers, with stakeholders. And just to give you an example, we'll go back to the business, Susan, later, but just to give you an example, we're working at the moment with a woman in Paris called Sandy Becker, who's developed an app called HEHAP, which is for women to record instances of domestic violence. And the key thing, about blockchain is a distributed digital ledger that provides a way of recording information and share it and maintain it for a community. So it's like a digital ledger. There's little blocks of data. It's really about keeping data. And the key thing about blockchain, it records a transaction has happened, when it happened, and that it happened correctly. The other thing, of course, it's accurate, it's traceable, and there's trust. So the big thing about blockchain technology is it's all about trust. And once you've something on that digital ledger, which is like a digital spreadsheet, you can't change it. But if you do change it, you know who's changed it, when they changed it, and when it happened. So, one of the things that I've been working with the ESRI at the moment is skills and blockchain, and it's a European project. And one of the findings that's come through this, and I think it's relevant for today, that one of the key tasks for people in blockchain is to communicate what it is. So I could say to you, might say, that's a very simple definition of a blockchain, but you don't need to know anything else, really, in the sense that it's a way of gathering and keeping data in a secure, safe way. Now, I'll get onto this in a minute about your business, but the reason why that's important, like this example I'm giving you with eHub, is that can be used in a justice system with lawyers, with judges, but it also protects information and nobody can change it. So there's an application I don't think many people would have thought about in terms of blockchain, because often blockchain is associated with digital assets, with cryptocurrencies, but really its long-term impact is going to be on education, on business, on health, and the community in which we live. So BlockW, as I said, do all of those things in a way, but its main focus is creating that awareness and looking at ways where people can get information on it, use it for their own purposes. And it very much goes back to the themes that have come through today. If you want to use blockchain, don't worry per se about technology. The key thing you want to know first is, what do you want to use it for? So for example, Shane McCarthy will be talking to you there, and I don't to spoil his presentation, which is fantastic, as the same with Victoria as well. But he's looking at traceability of craft beer from barley to bottle. You can also use it for fish, from bait to your plate. And Victoria is looking at the unfunded people who haven't access to banks and so on, and how it can be used. So it can be used in a lot of cases, but the key thing is, what do you want to use it for? And I'll just leave to end this section, Susan, is to say, when we all started using email, we weren't really interested, or the internet, and what is email? All we wanted to know was, how could we use it? What could it be used for? How would it help us in our business? All of that thing. So it's not technology is the issue, it's your business is the issue, and what you want to use it for.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Professor Joyce O'Connor, who has brought us on a whirlwind journey there of A, her own background, B, her story of education, and C, blockchain. And I just want to read out a couple of points here that have come up. Louise O'Connor says, so true, always surround yourself with positivity and positive people who will be honest and constructive, inspiring as always, Joyce. Sandra said, I agree, Joyce, you need to understand how it can help you more than how it works. And I think your analogy with email is very important, because I don't care how email gets from A to B.
Exactly,
I just want the message to be received. Anne says, blockchain is accurate, traceable, and all about trust. The key thing is what you want to use it for. Laura says, thank you so much, Joyce. And Anne says, blockchain will be impacting education, business, health, and our community. Professor Joyce O'Connor, thank you so much indeed for joining us, and I hope you will stay on the line.
I will, absolutely.
Certainly, while Shane and Victoria are going to give us now some specific applications. So if you could bring them up on screen, please, that would be super. So we're going to now have Shane McCarthy, and he is joining us from Ireland Craft Beverages. And we're also going to have Victoria Thompson from Orora. Now, while we're getting everything set up there in the background so that we can bring these people to you, let me just summarize super briefly what Professor Joyce O'Connor said about what blockchain is. Okay, so first of all, she mentioned it's a digital ledger. In other words, it's a notebook in the cloud. And it's where a range of different things are noted on that, like transactions, but they're completely public. And that's why it's called a distributed ledger. That's why it can't be hacked, because everybody has access to it. And you might say, well, sure, if everyone has access to it, would everyone then know every transaction that I have? Well, no, because the identity of the transactions is anonymous. That's the difference. Now, from there, though, all of those transactions are put into a block, And every 10 minutes, those blocks are joined on to another block. And of course, as you join the whole lot together, that's called a blockchain. So that's the whole idea of trust, of immutability. Immutability means that you can't change what has been on that distributed ledger because it's gone into a block and it's been now packaged together into this block that has been stuck on to this blockchain. Okay, so that's just a super brief explanation about just some of the language that Professor Joyce was using there. But we're going to move on now because I've basically explained to you how the email gets sent from A to B. What we're now going to talk about is some applications of that in very real situations in business and in social enterprise around using blockchain for good. So, first of all, good afternoon to Shane and Victoria. I see that you're both here now. So can I, first of all, let's go to you first, Victoria. Tell us a little bit about you and Orora.
Thank you. Thank you very much for asking me to join the session today. It's been some really great discussion already. I'm a technology lawyer by background and training, and spent the first part of my career working inside large law firms, advising government on digital transformation, back when we were just trying to start understanding the internet, and then working most recently with large banks and financial institutions, trying to get them to understand how to leverage digital technology to reach their customers and serve their customers in new and innovative ways, working with Barclays Bank and Development Bank of Singapore, that took me out to Asia and helping set up digital banks in India and Indonesia. And that ultimately led just to the pre-pandemic setting up Orora and thinking about, if we really want to solve some of the difficult problems in the world that we face because of climate change and working towards the UN 17 Sustainability Development Goals, what type of financial institution and services do we really need for the next decade or so to achieve the 2030 goals? And that's really what Orora is about. It's about delivering financial services that really think about humanity and humanity-centered banking. When we think about the people that don't have access to finance, which is a scary amount even in a developed nation like the UK, where we still have 1.3 million people that are homeless and unable to access any financial services. We have 13 million people accessing government benefits and services, and 11 billion lost in access to those funds that they need to help them get through their lives and the things that they need. So how can we do that? Because there doesn't seem to be institutions acting that way and doing that. So I've really gone on a journey, much like Joyce has just talked about, from having my technical legal training to then understanding how technology works, getting involved and taking on those little bites of training to learn about blockchain technology, financial services technology, to where I am now, which is running my own business, building mobile applications, building financial services technology that can solve those problems. So yeah, that's me.
I think those numbers are frightening, Victoria. I mean, 11 billion lost in benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really, really frightening numbers. Like 13 million people on benefits, but 11 billion of that being lost. And did you say 1.3 million homeless people?
Yeah.
In the UK. Okay, because we do want.
And that doesn't even include a lot of people who are in temporary accommodation, because they fall off the government statistics counters conveniently for them. So actually, when you probably looked at the people that are in and out of temporary accommodation, not in sort of like those B&B kind of scenarios and some sheltered housing, then that gets a lot bigger. And when you think about how that then goes out into Europe and into undeveloped economies and emerging markets, that gets to be a scary, scary amount of people that are struggling.
And I want to come back to something, to a particular question that you have for our audience today. Based on that, we'll do that in a moment. But before we get to that, Shane McCarthy, you're very welcome. Could you now tell us a little bit about you and Irish Craft Beverages? And you're on mute. I can just see there. Yeah, perfect.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, big thanks for having me on today. My background is I have a degree in finance and economics from the Queen's University of Belfast. That probably set me up to travel the world and work with some of the biggest financial institutions around the world. I go from New York to London. I then moved into the world of fintech, and I would say that's what grew my curiosity of blockchain. We then became the first company to use blockchain technology for product supply chain. And as Joyce was saying earlier, she was giving a great kind of explanation of how you can use this technology. And with downstream beers, you always have to have a why. And I suppose for us, our why, excuse me, our why was really about transparency and trust. So if you go to any supermarket and you see this big array of beautiful craft beers or, lovely food products, a lot of consumers actually don't know what they're picking up. And if you follow the money train, the majority of consumers' money all go to the top 2 or 3 companies in the world. So that for us was something that we wanted to disrupt. We wanted to research and see what the most cutting edge technology was out there. And even, listening to everyone's story today, especially, even Maria's story and other people speaking, we went through that entrepreneurial journey as well. We had our first couple of years of really having to dig deep and do the funding rounds and, kind of work tireless hours. And for me, it was about working with people that you trust. So when we co-founded Ireland Craft Beverages, I actually went back to a couple of college friends of mine, friends that were chartered accountants, chartered architects, and we built the team, with friends that we could trust. And it was just really interesting to hear everyone's kind of story and how they overlap and how they've evolved. But, when we set up Downstream, it was 2018, and it was, I think timing is a big part of what these new technologies, when you are the first to market. 2018, no one was talking about blockchain. It was actually the end of 2017. And when we were coming to people saying, we want to create a blockchain beer, it was over people's head. They didn't really understand it. So as what Joyce was saying as well, they don't need to know. And it's something that we learned very quickly. They don't need to know that the blockchain is operating in the background. When they do need to know it is when something goes wrong. So, in our instance, we managed to get a listing with Marks and Spencer's. So if we put out a really bad batch of beer, it would normally take about 6 to 7 days to recall that beer. With the blockchain, immutability and audit trail, it takes a matter of seconds. So everyone in the kind of process and stakeholders that are in the warehouse, or even the consumer, if a consumer wants to know, where is my £5 going to? Is it going to a local business? Is it actually going to support a local enterprise? Or is it going to the same bigger companies, that are out there that own, a lot of these guys own 90 to 95% of the shelf space. And because they have so much collateral, they want to ensure that they keep that shelf space. So for us, using this technology really allowed everyone along this supply chain to empower them, to give them the information that they should be allowed. And, for us, the whole brand is around the downstream of data. It's about giving too much information almost, because you can only fit so much information on a label. And we use QR codes. No one was using QR codes back in 2017, and now everyone's using QR codes. And, that was from researching Asia Pacific. No one in the Western world is really using it. iPhones didn't have QR codes or codes activated. Now it's in every camera phone. You basically hold the camera open to a downstream product, and it'll actually prompt you into the beer to verify that it is an authentic beer. And you can follow that full supply chain the whole way back to the barley, to the mineral makeup of the water, to the hops, to who the brewer is. And what we find a lot is people want to know that story. So I suppose that in a brief nutshell is how we came about creating the world's first blockchain beer, known as downstream beers.
About to go back over to Mentimeter to ask everyone to participate in 2 key questions, Shane. And we could, if we wanted to, give a QR code to do that. Just saying. So now, can I just open up Mentimeter? Now, we have 2 questions for you this time. Okay, so we're just going to open it up. The first question is about what you might perceive blockchain to be? So if you could just move on the slide there and meant it. Yep, thank you. Okay. So let's just see here. What do you think that blockchain is? So the question is, do you think that blockchain is different to track and trace? So you might say, yes, it is different. Or you might say, no, it's okay. Let's just see now. Or you might say, I don't know enough about blockchain to answer. Let's just see where we're at, because we want to use this question to inform part of our discussion here as well later on. Okay, so far, I'm just going to give this round about another 10 seconds. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm not going to ask Shane to comment on that for a moment. I am going to come back. So Shane, the two clear winners here is blockchain is different to track and trace, and secondly, many people don't know enough to answer the question. Okay, and that's all we wanted to check. Now, can I go on to the second question on Mentimeter, please? Sorry, I should also say second and last question on Mentimeter, please, if the team could share this. Now, this goes back to the point that Victoria was making earlier, right? So she was asking, or she was talking about the 1.3 million people who are actually homeless without a roof on their over their heads at all, temporary or otherwise. But what if you saw a person like that holding up a digital device asking for money, as distinct to, let's say, a cup or otherwise? Now, I know it's an emotive question, but she's in the business of using humanitarian-centered banking and using technology to facilitate that. You can't use technology without a device. So her question to you is that how would you react? Now, I trust that you can now see this, Victoria, and I mean, I see you kind of smiling to yourself as you're watching here. So skeptical, suspect, shocked, not sure. So it's interesting. It's interesting. They're not homeless. Why not? I'd be impressed, surprised. Their business, wow. Shocked is the word that's coming out here. And the bigger the word is in the word cloud, the more people are sending it in. Risk of personal loss, revolutionary, they're clever, suspicious, more likely to give money, the person is educated. We're making a lot of assumptions here in the audience, and I'm really glad you're telling us this. This is obviously an anonymous forum. So maybe Victoria, can we start here with your reaction to what's just
yeah
on
I
your
mean
screen?
this is very similar to the results that we got from our consultation that we had on our recent government research project that we did, where we were looking at how if we had sponsored mobile devices, so charities would, or technology companies or telco companies would sponsor the device for the people to get them into the system. Because actually what is even bigger than homelessness is the exclusion from people from technology. People don't have access to devices, and in the COVID pandemic we've seen that more than anything. If you didn't have a mobile phone and things were going cashless, people didn't want to touch money, how would you do things? If you worked in a 0 hours contract, or you were dependent upon face-to-face communications, but you didn't have a smartphone, how could you do things? How could you apply for grants? How could you apply for money? How could you access universal credit? How could your children access the educational Google Classroom everybody had to join during the lockdown periods? This is an issue. So how do we, it's something that Orora is really thinking about with our charitable partners, the UN Sustainability Foundation, the World Health Innovation Summit, the Red Cross, big issue. This is the issues that we're talking about. If we can get these devices into people's hands so they can collect donations, they can manage getting into the system, so to speak, how will that be perceived by other people? Do we also need to have a communication and an education agenda around these new channels by which money can be donated and distributed? It's something, it's really, it is very similar to what we're seeing. So we're having to think about how do we now explain this move towards enabling people to access technology and enabling people to access digital cash? Because if we fast forward 5 to 10 years, it's highly unlikely we will be paying for a lot of things with money and coins and pound notes. there are concepts now of central digital banking currencies that are going to come forward. And one of the amazing things that blockchain, if central digital banking currencies are done in a distributed way, is they can really think about how people can avoid currency instability, how people can access currencies of their choices, whether that's the US dollar or whether that's the pound or the euro, the dominant reserve currencies of the world. And a lot of people who read the news will have seen the advances that's happening in Asia in this space, with the digital currencies that are being promoted in China and in places like Singapore, and the experiments that they're doing there. This could mean a massive difference in regions like Africa and CARICOM and in Latin America, for people to access currencies and more stability in how people move money around the world when they are working in different countries to support people back home. Because this is a huge issue, the cost of global remittances to help and support people. And that's something worth thinking hard about in Orora, because so much money is lost in the system just moving money around. And it's a great way that blockchain technology can be used to enable people to save money so that they can send it more for what they want to do with it.
That's the key thing I'm taking from this, Victoria, is, and as I'm looking at the word cloud that, you know, that we saw there, is that we expect that we need to use technology for our interactions, you know, financial and otherwise. I mean, you talk there about having access to Google Classroom, etc. Is that if someone is in a homeless situation, why might the expectation be different? And I think, you know, it's worthwhile challenging that assumption, and certainly a worthwhile conversation to have. And as you say, using blockchain as a mechanism to make that easier and to stop money getting lost in simply moving it from A to B. There are some questions coming in here, Shane, and around the cost or around the funding benefit of blockchain. So can I put a two-parter to you, please? Number one is, can you comment on that first, the poll that we asked people? Most people don't think that blockchain is the same as track and trace. They think that it's different. And secondly, or else they don't know enough about it. And the second thing is, like, for you to set up this barley to bottle idea, you know, the first blockchain beer, how much did all that actually cost?
Yep, no problem. So the first one, you know, fundamentally, I would say the methodologies around track and trace are very similar to what blockchain is trying to offer. So when you go and get your Amazon package, and, you know, when you follow that through its process, and DLTs are offering a very similar process. So, you know, the words are different, but what they're trying to set out and what they're trying to do is they're trying to give you transparency. And, you know, they are different in their fundamentals, but, you know, the methodologies of what they're trying to do are very similar. And I think when people hear the word blockchain, it scares them a little bit. And, you know, more and more, I would prefer, when I'm explaining to, you know, over the years, the analogies of what people are probably more used to seeing when they're, you know, using current day technology. So they're definitely similar, but fundamentally, you know, they have their differences. So, you know, everyone tracks and traces the parcels or stuff that they would have ordered probably a lot more during lockdown. So I just think that there definitely can be, you know, similarities there, and people shouldn't get as kind of afraid of using this technology because they think, oh, this is just a heavy tech word that I'll never understand. And then moving on to the cost implications, when we first set it up, there was no blockchain companies in 2017. You know, over the last 5 years, it's become a services company, and the biggest companies in the world are offering these services. So Microsoft, Oracle, and that is the piece that is evolving, and that is what is making it more commercially viable for businesses to implement this technology into their day-to-day workings. So we, in 2017, we did work with one of the first blockchain companies set up in Belfast called ArcNet, and they worked out of Vancouver. We now evolved into a company that actually works out of Galway. Their developers are based there. They have their servers in Dublin, and it's really commercially viable. If you want to, it's almost like setting up a website. You know, if you want to plug in the data and your processes, it's the same as doing it in any software system. You just got to take the time, the effort, and know your why. You know, you don't need to do it. I see more and more people using the word blockchain to greenwash and to say they're doing something. but the real purpose still isn't there. There isn't a purpose for why they're doing it. So when you put it out to market, people aren't going to care. People aren't going to care that it's on the blockchain. So you just got to make sure that you're doing it for the right purposes. And, you know, you don't even need to say the word. It just can be running in the background. And, you know, it's just this week that we're doing a massive brew run, you know, for another 80,000 beer cans. The difference between the beer cans, our beer cans sitting on shelf, is that every single one of them is tracked and traced and can be verified compared to every other beer can that is going out to the market there. And it may not matter to the consumer. Most consumers don't want to know. We actually get more excited about telling the story of the brewery. We actually get more excited about talking about the independent, talking about why they're different than a big, massive industrial plant, you know, that churns out millions of liters of beer, talking about the quality. And again, coming back to the purpose. So yeah, it is commercially viable. If anyone wants to look it up, I would highly recommend that they look at a company called Micro Focus. They do everything from tracking, you know, dog food to beer now. So there's the whole upstream of data as well. That, you know, what we do is we actually put the carbon footprint of every single beer that we make. We try and over communicate. We don't have to tell people the environmental impact, but when people scan our beers in London and Scotland, I can get a real-time map showing me where all of these cans end up. So there's this environmental, and I know that there is a big climate agenda being pushed by the European Union. Yeah, just coming back to even Victoria's point there, I seen today that El Salvador is the first country in the world that now accepts Bitcoin, which is a bit of a game changer when you get a whole country on board. But to me, the fundamentals all can overlap, and there's so much synergy across any industry. So whether you're in, you know, social enterprise or whether you're in, you know, a more capitalistic business, if you want to implement and you can see value, then definitely look at, there's more than just Micro Focus out there, but that's the company that we ended up moving to because it's the most commercially viable. You know, it's a fraction of a penny to absorb onto every label. So that's what makes it really viable for a small business like ours. If we can do it, then everyone can do it. So that's why
I think, Shane, I think blockchain's gone through a massive evolution from where it was when I first started sort of trying to develop solutions back in 2015 when I was at the Development Bank of Singapore, and we were playing with trade finance solutions. Now it's got to a point when you think about the curve of evolution that you've got it to the point where it's a service that you can package up and you can license. I mean, with our wallet and our money transfers that we are enabling for the homeless, the only reason we're using blockchain is because it's so much cheaper than trying to do it through faster payments. We can avoid the cost and consequences of the banking infrastructure. That's meaning it's not affordable for the major financial institutions to serve this segment of the market. We can run a wallet for £1 a month. We can do a transaction for 2p, and sometimes cheaper than that, depending on the value of the transaction. And that means it's therefore affordable for charitable institutions to transfer money much cheaper than the £5 they would pay for a B2B transaction if they were moving it with HSBC or Barclays. And PayPal have done massive strides in how they move money around and making that more accessible. But this is the next evolution that I think you're going to see in monetary transfer. And almost blockchain, I see in the future as taking on almost like an infrastructure, a data infrastructure layer in different interactions in society, much like we used to send huge chunks of paper around the world with a courier or various things. We can now send data. I mean, it was an amazing share by one of the heads of Microsoft blockchain labs the other week, where there was this amazing picture of Bill Gates hanging from a tree on a huge stack of paper on one side and then holding a CD-ROM. And this is exactly what we're going to see with blockchain. We went from a world where we used to have massive amounts of paper, and then we put it on a CD. Before that, we put it on a floppy drive.
I was going to say we could get into like, you know, now it's now actually nothing at all because it's held in Dropbox anyway, etc. Can I ask you one last question, Victoria, on this, which is I kind of would like to bring today to a finish as we're approaching the end of the conference, right back to where we started, which was funding, because what you're talking about doing, the essence of Orora, and using technology as its fundamental core is one thing. But the impact that you're hoping to get is a social outcome. It's a social impact.
Yeah.
What's it like to seek out funding for that purpose?
It's really hard. And we've been very, very lucky at getting support from the UK Research and Innovation Council in the UK. But that's the only way we would have got going, because it's very hard when Orora is a for-profit company. We are a private enterprise, but we are a hybrid. We have the values of a social enterprise, and we are definitely a part of that whole movement to find ethical values within for-profit business. And we really want to customize that. And that really doesn't gel well with a classic venture capital raising ethos of what's my 10x, what's all of this. You really do require patient capital that wants to achieve an outcome. So we're very much about measuring our social and environmental impacts alongside our financial impact. And that isn't always a big 10x straight away. So that's what's really hard, trying to get money and corporate money to move in that direction. So that's why we've looked at our token and what we can do with the Orora token and how we can raise money in a different way, because that's also something that blockchain can offer, because we can create new models around all of this. And I think that's what's really also exciting about this technology, because it enables people to see what is happening with their investment and with their money through the tokenization of that value.
I'm just going to read out a couple of comments here. That is, if I go back up here. Okay, so first of all, somebody starts off by saying, "Hi Shane, massive inspiration." Trish says, "Wow, now I understand, Shane. I was really struggling there. How do you construct and maintain that chain?" Okay, glad that we got a chance to clarify that. Michelle says, "How do you generate income from the technology? This is all new to me, so interesting." Anne says, "Yes, people need more access to device and then credit to access the internet as well." Claire says, "Will the transfer amount be limited, and what will stop people using it on a crowd to collect more?" I think that goes back to maybe using the device to collect money. Then Anne says, "So true, Victoria. I think there will be a massive need for communication to educate the general public about the digital tools using blockchain, global remittances, etc." And there are some questions as well that went back to Professor Joyce O'Connor around how those courses around this area are available. Then also, now I was wondering this as well, but I knew that we would get to it. Trish says, "Is it only viable for products, or how would services, professional businesses benefit from using blockchain?" Which of course we heard from Victoria there. Peter says, "What's the name of the Galway blockchain company?" Sarah says, "Does the carbon footprint take into account the footprint of the blockchain technology itself?" Anna says, "I'm so excited about Orora and their token." Claire says, "The National Lottery may help with funding depending on your financial model." And so there's lots more in there, and there's lots happening as well on Twitter. And can I ask you both, just to finish with, a one-liner or a 1.5-liner around, let's say people today really interested in what you're saying. Maybe it is the carbon footprint side of things, Shane. Maybe it is the idea of lowering the cost of global remittances for themselves or for organizations they're part of, Victoria. What's the first key thing, or what one key resource would you direct them to in order that they could start making a difference? Maybe Victoria, we'll start with you.
I think if you're just on your journey about learning about blockchain, there was an amazing paper that was supported by Lord Holmes of Richmond back in 2015, 2016, which was called Blockchain for Good. And it's an amazing paper. I had a little bit of work on it when I was at Barclays, so I'm going to promote it. And this was talking about all the different use cases and gave some amazing examples of how it could be used in public service and public good. And I think that's a really great resource if you're just entering into learning about blockchain. Have a look at that paper. It's really accessible, and brilliant. Have a think about that.
Blockchain for Good, and to read that paper. Great. Okay. And Shane, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so I would say 2 things. If you're, on your journey, definitely check out what micro-focused services have to offer. If you're beginning it, then I'll go back to kind of what helped me in my journey. One of the books that was really helpful that I read was called The Business of Blockchain, and it's co-written by the co-founder of Ethereum. So he's got a very good understanding of how this will evolve and how this will, inevitably turn out. So it's not a heavy tech book, but it'll give you a really good idea of how you might, spark some innovation to use this technology for good.
And just in case people are wondering what Ethereum is, so Ethereum is a cryptocurrency, which is the payment that is given to people who actually create the chain in between the blocks. That's what that is. And it's important, I think, I see you both nodding even as I'm saying this, is it's important as well to distinguish blockchain from cryptocurrencies and to absolutely take drama and emotion out of what cryptocurrencies and how they can sometimes be in the news, apart from what they can actually be used for. Thank you both sincerely for that. And you know what, particularly there, Shane, you used the term, Victoria, you spoke about use cases. That's what I think needs to proliferate this conversation and going back to Professor Joyce's analogy, it's not about what it does, but what's in it for me. And as we more have the conversations about that, I think more and more of that will be apparent. We're going to finish this conversation now with a video from the Ireland Craft Company, where you'll just see an example of how from barley to bottle actually happens.
Downstream is the world's first beer to use blockchain technology to showcase everything you want to know about the beer, including its ingredients and the brewing methods, the people and the process involved in making the beer. We contract brew downstream at Boyne Brewhouse in Drogheda in Ireland, and we sell it currently into Marks and Spencer's in the UK, some online subscription sites such as Honest Brew and Flavourly in the UK, and we've even exported it to Singapore to date. Our ambition is to make downstream an exportable product across the globe, and so we're working on some new markets presently. The beers that we have to date in the downstream range include Hybrid, which is an Indian Pale Lager, Token, a Session IPA, Autonomy, a Juicy Pale Ale, and Babel, which is a Pilsner. So on the front of our cans of downstream, there is a QR code, which most people don't really know what to do with the QR code, but nowadays there's a built-in feature on iOS cameras that it automatically picks it up. Or if you're an Android, you might need a QR reader the consumer can scan, and it brings them to a unique site. It tells them when their beer was made, it's time-stamped and geolocated to the brewery. It tells you the people involved, all the events and raw materials, including their information like their batch codes. And it gives the consumer a lot of interactivity into how it was made. We'll always be looking for new beers to bring out and new ways of showcasing the story and the provenance of our products through digital storybooks.
Well, now we are after one serious morning where we have looked at three key specific areas. One was funding. We started off with Anne Ravanona, where she took us through the funding menu, the process, the perspective, the performance. And then, of course, we actually saw that performance as well, taking action here right in front of us, where we saw our three pictures. And again, just like I'd mentioned earlier on, please do reach out to them if you can give them advice or direction, or perhaps you could be a customer, perhaps you could be a supplier, perhaps you could be a mentor, etc. But also take heart from what they did. By putting your hand up and going for pitching competitions, look at the value that it can give you. And it really is unrivaled experience. Then after that, we asked Anne for her own feedback, which she kindly shared on each individual one. We had then a break, and then we moved into our two inspiring speakers, Brenda Romero and Mairead Mackall. And particularly what they spoke about was understanding what failure really is, and that it's a literal, to quote Brenda, a literal step towards success. And she spoke about all of the things that happened, including her move here to Galway, how that failure brought her on that journey, and how she has fallen in love with Ireland. And as you've all said, how Ireland has fallen in love with her. And Mairead Mackall, as she said, a lifestyle that isn't for the faint-hearted. She speaks about just growing and growing and growing, values-based leadership, surrounding yourself by your team, understanding that there's certain parts of your business can be the most important ones. For her, her home is the most important part of her business. As she said, she's got seven kids, so she has to find a way in order to make that work-life balance work. And she does, and she knows what she's like herself and where all of that is going, and putting the processes and the procedures around her in order to do so. Both of them said that freedom and flexibility, it's not that it's necessarily easy to get, but they have both found their own way of doing it, as well as pursuing personal business success as well. And by knowing what they wanted, and I loved Brenda Romero's mantra of, I'll get what I want. And then she shared, you know, that very personal priority list really of what she wants to have this year and how she has to prioritize it. But as she shared with us, she is both disciplined and patient so that she can arrive at that end point. And then after that, then we moved on to our conversation about blockchain. We started off with Professor Joyce O'Connor, who explained to us how blockchain is a revolutionary technology that can be applied in so many different areas. And she spoke about the path of education to getting there. On the day that's in it, I think it's also worth remembering that if you're over 23, you don't need any points in order to pursue, as she called it, second chance education. And then from there, we went on to hear Shane McCarthy from Irish Craft Beverages, as well as Victoria Thompson for Orora, where they spoke about actual use cases for blockchain technology. So it's certainly been a very rich and inspiring morning. And I have to say, I have had two devices here, trying to keep up with you, between what has been happening on chat, what has been happening on Twitter. And again, just to reiterate the point, because many of you have been asking us, all of the full recording of today will be available on the website afterwards. There's been lots of resources shared, and we'll do as much as we can on Twitter and on social media as well to share those. Now, I do need to make sure that I thank a variety of organisations and people who have made today possible. I wanted to thank the European Social Fund, also the Department of Justice, GMIT, of course, as well, who have made a major part of today happen. In addition as well, we do want to thank Meolio for sponsoring the Pitch Prize, which is mentoring and training for the winner. In addition as well, of course, I have to thank sincerely each and every one of the speakers who has been with us. From Anne Ravanona this morning, we started off with Dr. Orla Quinn, then followed on by our three pitchers. Then after that, we had Mairead Mackell and we had Brenda Romero. Then after that, we had Professor Joyce O'Connor and then Shane McCarthy and Victoria Thompson. So a huge, sincere thank you to them all. In addition as well, I mean, while I have been here outwardly, there's an army behind me. So we have a huge thank you to the Sound and Light team and to Cormac Staunton, who have been the people who have brought all of the audio visual to you here today. Really a great appreciation to them. We've been working with them for quite some time now in making today what it was. Also, there is some phenomenal people here where we've had a super busy WhatsApp group and getting ready. And I have to tell you that the preparation, as you can imagine, for something like this happens over months. So a massive thank you to Maria Staunton, also to Michelle Lee and to Sandra Nolan Dively as well. Names probably familiar to many of you, but maybe not to everybody. They deserve, they've poured their hearts and souls into this morning, and a huge, sincere thank you to them. And of course, the final thank you that I have to say is to each and every single one of you. You have been here with us right throughout the morning. You've been registering, you've been tweeting, you've been interacting on chat. I've been getting messages across personally to my own LinkedIn as well, saying how much you're getting out of this morning. So we're truly appreciative to you. We are going to record a summary of this, and I will put it up on my own LinkedIn later on today. I'm at Susan HayesCulleton on LinkedIn. I will put it up there later on today. And also, we will send out an email with the recording and a list of useful resources to you. Also, to all of the organisations who've helped to raise awareness for the event today, we're truly appreciative, as without you, of course, well then the message of all that has been happening this morning couldn't have reached as far and as wide. So in the spirit of what today has been all about, I'm going to finish with a final action for you, and we're right on time, just like we know is so important, is that I just want to mention that the START programme is open for application. Now, the closing date is the 30th of September. Now, we're all back to school. The 30th of September is the closing date. So just to make sure that you take some time out and to take a look at that and apply for it and go for it and be part of, as Anne mentioned earlier, to be growing your tribe along the way. And just in case you're wondering what that's all about, we're going to finish with a video explaining to you all about how that programme works and what you'll get out of it. So here, live in Galway. Thank you so much indeed for being with us. We wish you every success, and until next time, Slán agus Beannacht.